There are some problems here. Sorry, big time.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
The guy! Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, doing the first hour solo today. And we have huge news for you guys. We've got news about the latest in the peace talks with Iran. Yes, there is latest. Yes, we'll tell you what is real and what isn't real. That's what sets us apart from a lot of the other news outlets in reporting actual facts, you guys. But although I do have a little bit of credit for New York Times again today, so this is kind of extraordinary. So things are getting a little bit better on those grounds. Okay, and then a little bit later, AIPAC tries to buy an election. It goes awry, wonderfully awry. You're not allowed to talk about how they buy elections, except of course we're going to. Netanyahu admits that they're stealing Gaza. We'll show you the exact quotes. Of course, this is the only place you'll see it, plus the Israeli press. You certainly won't see it in mainstream media because they're running the Israeli protection racket, as you all know. And then later in the show, Trump goes after Jean Carroll because he apparently didn't abuse her enough. So he's now weaponizing the Department of Justice to go after her because he's a giant douche. Okay, so now let's get to it. Let's get to the negotiations. All right, guys, we have new news on whether we have peace. 60-day memorandum of understanding, we were told this morning, is on the precipice. It's nearly done. In fact, I want to give you quotes right away that show you that it might be done, and then you're going to see whether that's really true. All right, so Axios reports, as usual, US and Iranian negotiators have reached an agreement on a 60-day memorandum of understanding to extend the ceasefire and launch negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. Oh my God, that sounds like amazing news. In the beginning, we were wondering if Axios was just doing this to, help Israel in some way, et cetera. And maybe that's still the case. These stories about, oh my God, we were almost at peace, right? But now people are wondering if it's just market manipulation and that's all. Because, hold on, let me prove my case. Right after they said that, they did clarify, quote, but President Trump has yet to give us final approval. So, okay, we don't have a deal, at least from the American side. Let's look at the Iranian side. Iran has also not confirmed its acceptance. Why are we talking about this then? Okay, now to be fair, there are other people reporting it, and there's Arab countries who are saying, hey, this is interesting. The Iranians have shown some interest in going forward, but it's definitely not finalized on either side. But let's dive into the details, because what you're gonna see here is how these deals fall apart, and then you'll be able to judge too whether this was even real or just totally fabricated for the reasons that we discussed. Okay, so they continue at Axios. The memorandum of understanding will include an Iranian commitment not to pursue a nuclear weapon, the officials said. Will also state that the first issues to be negotiated during the 60-day window will be how to dispose of Iran's highly enriched uranium and how to address Iranian enrichment. Well, that's great, because that's the thing that we wanted. The nuclear enrichment, get it out of the country, they can't make weapons. Plus the Strait of Hormuz. Well, so let's check in on that. The MOU would also state that the war between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon would end. Oh, an issue on which Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have at least one tense discussion. So we'll come back to the Strait, because in the deal, the Strait of Hormuz would open back up. But on the issue of Lebanon, that's a giant sticking point. So this memorandum of understanding says Israel is not allowed to keep attacking Lebanon. And Israel doesn't want that. So let's see how that turned out, because there's facts on the ground I got to tell you about that might influence that. A US official apparently told Barak Ravid at Axios, the president relayed to the mediators that he wants a couple of days to think about it. Yeah, so the issue of Lebanon comes up and he needs a couple of days to think about it. In other words, call Netanyahu and go, are you sure you're gonna release the tape? Please don't release it. We don't know, That's But if you think that's not a possibility, you're obviously not following the news. Okay, the source said, now this is interesting, this is The Guardian, right? Now we switched over to a real publication. The source said Tehran had not informed the Pakistani mediator that the text was complete and would notify both the mediator and the public once finalized, adding that Western media reports claiming the agreement had already been finalized were false. So that is Iran telling real reporters, no, we don't have a deal. That information is just false. Okay, interesting. Then they asked Arab officials, The Guardian did, hey, Trump is saying that you guys are going to sign the Abraham Accords. Again, if you don't know, the Abraham Accords normalize relations with Israel for these different countries. The UAE has already signed it, for example, and it sets up trading relationship. And well, what's the downside on that? That sounds like a lovely piece, especially if you listen to American media. They have never portrayed it as anything but a wonderful peace deal and a huge step forward. No, those countries had been holding off for the last 60 years because in order to normalize relations with Israel, they want Israel to free the Palestinians and end the occupation. And the Abraham Accord says, no, betray the Palestinians, don't end the occupation. Who cares? Let Israel do whatever it wants to the Palestinians. So the Abraham Accords is a knife that they stick in the back of the Palestinians. That is why it's deeply unpopular in the Middle East. Isn't it weird that at a bare minimum, the American media didn't tell you how unpopular the Abraham Accords are and that the whole point is to betray the Palestinians? Even if you say, hey, well, you know what? Maybe the whole point isn't just to betray the Palestinians, but certainly it does. There's no question that that's an integral part of it. Isn't it weird that they never told you that? Now you could look it up, that the whole point is to exclude the Palestinians from that deal. Okay, so they asked Arab countries, so we here in America that you guys are all gonna betray them and that you're gonna sign this deal with the Israelis. So The Guardian got an actual quote from an Arab official. Quote, someone is misunderstanding this situation in a big way. We should be paid back, the Arab countries, not paying the price. And he considers that person, and a lot of the governments consider signing the Abraham Accords as paying a price. So you want us to help Israel? Wait, there is money potentially being exchanged. We're gonna get to that in a second, and wait till you see who pays it. Now we go to the New York Times. And in a shocking development, New York Times is reporting fairly honestly what's going on. Okay, attaboy. Hey, we always give credit where credit is due. Anyways, they write here, for the Americans, key to any deal would be that Iran disavows its nuclear program, an intention for acquiring a nuclear weapon, a promise Iranian leaders have made many times over the years, and agreed to dispose of its highly enriched uranium, two of the officials said. The Strait of Hormuz would reopen immediately, one of the officials said, but the US military blockade there would stay in place. So, and then eventually we would take the blockade out piece by piece as Iran removed the mines and reopened the Strait of Hormuz. So the two things we wanted, Strait of Hormuz, yes. No nuclear weapons program, yes. We're done, there's no reason not to sign this. That was our only stated interest, American interest. So why are we still there? Why don't we sign the deal? Everybody knows why, it's Israel, which I'm gonna get to in a second. But look at the New York Times saying, yeah, Iran has offered to never make a nuclear bomb over and over again. An actual reporting breaking out at the New York Times. That is actually accurate and correct. So this whole idea of Iran's gonna make a nuke, giant lie. It was never true. They had a fatwa against it. They never even had a missile to deliver it. They never got to 90% enrichment. All of this has been a giant lie for the last 30 years, pushed by Benjamin Netanyahu and the entire Israeli government. Yes, for all of that time. The Israeli government has been lying to us decade after decade after decade. So now, since Israel wanted this war and they started this war, obviously they're gonna pay for it, right? Now everybody knows that's not the case. Israel never pays its bills, never does what it promises, and it makes either us or someone else pay for it. So who's gonna pay for it this time? New York Times says Trump and his team have quietly lobbied the Gulf Arab states to underwrite Iran's post-war reconstruction contingent on the Iranians agreeing to acceptable terms. The Gulf countries have discussed a $300 billion investment fund to that end. Why are the Gulf countries paying? Because they had American bases and Israel wanted to start this war. Iran struck back logically at American bases. I hate it. But that's what happens when you start a war. If you didn't expect that, you're a moron. Oh, that's right, that's Trump and his entire team. Oh, Netanyahu told me they wouldn't attack our bases. It never occurred to you that the biggest liar in the world might lie to you? Well, if that's really true and Trump and his entire team never once considered that Netanyahu would lie to them, well, then they're the most incompetent idiots the world has ever seen. So, but to be fair to them, again, New York Times reported, yeah, Netanyahu came in, the head of Mossad came in on a telezoom before the war started and browbeat Trump into doing the war and say, oh, they won't attack you at all. They're so weak, you're gonna destroy them. You're a big daddy, you're gonna be the greatest military general in history. And Trump was like, okay. And then even his own corrupt advisors later the next day were like, well, some of that is not really true. We're not going to easily get regime change. I mean, that's at least what they leaked to the New York Times. So it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, we did exactly as Israel ordered us to do. And now the Gulf states, because they were idiots and made deals with Israel, now both got attacked and might have to pay $300 billion to Iran, who they're not at all happy with and they're not allies with. So well played, Gulf countries. Way to be utter suckers and fools for Israel. You thought making a deal with Israel was gonna help you? I don't know that it gets dumber than that. Okay, so now let's go to what Israel's doing. Are they gonna help the peace process, make sure things settle down, temperatures cool down, and America, their top special ally, a country they do so much for, is able to get out of this disastrous war that's totally pulverizing our economy? It's funny, right? Israel help us? No, as you all know, they're gonna do the exact opposite. But again, honest reporting, interestingly, fascinatingly, has broken out of the New York Times. So they explain Israel widened its offensive in Lebanon on Thursday, striking Beirut for the first time in almost a month and pushing deeper into the country's south as this escalating conflict with Hezbollah threatens negotiations to end the US-Israeli war in Iran. So in other words, yeah, Israel knows that it's threatening the peace negotiations because it wants to. It doesn't want peace. It always says like, oh, self-defense, all I want is peace. And American media is like, all they want is peace. Jake Tapper, all they want is peace. They're those innocent victims of those barbaric terrorist Muslims who you should all hate. By the way, I'm objective. You're a joke. But to be fair to Jake, almost every cable news anchor, it seems like they're working for Israel. They only do Israeli propaganda. They're all jokes. They're news actors. They're not news anchors. But here, when we see actual reporting, it's not like we're biased. We say, I've been super harsh on the New York Times, but thank you for saying yes, Israel is widening the war, which is hurting our efforts to get to peace. And that's not an accident. That's obviously because Israel doesn't want peace, it wants war, to take more land. Not complicated. Later in the show, I'm gonna show you how Netanyahu is saying, we took over 60% of Gaza, and we're gonna take 70%, and maybe get up to 100%. By the way, cable news, weird he said that, but no one's reported it. That is so weird that they hid an incredibly important fact about the war and about peace to help Israel. That's so weird, except now you all know it's not at all weird. That's all cable news does. But New York Times getting better, so they explain. Israel said on Thursday that it also struck more than 135 targets belonging to Hezbollah, they claim belonging to Hezbollah, over the previous 24 hours in southern and eastern Lebanon, including rocket launch sites and training camps. Guys, you get it? We say we might get the peace, and Israel goes literally ballistic. They go, oh yeah, we're gonna do a bombing campaign like you haven't seen. We're gonna hit their capital in Beirut. We're gonna hit 135 targets to make sure that the Lebanese are super pissed and that they don't wanna go to peace either, that Iran is pissed, that they don't wanna go to peace. We're gonna destroy peace at all costs, says Israel as usual. Gee, I wonder who the warmongers are. The ones who started the war? No, it couldn't be them. The ones who want to continue the war, and the minute we're close to peace, they come and destroy peace? Right, of course it's Israel. Anyone with eyes and ears knows this is. Even the New York Times at this point is like, all right, no mas, it's Israel, right? Okay, but every cable news anchor is like, I don't know, which Muslim do I blame? It's all the Muslims' fault. You should hate Muslims. You should hate them, hate them, hate them. So when they murder 23,000 Palestinian children, remember, it's not nearly as important as an Israeli supporter being offended. If you've offended an Israeli supporter, we'll do national news, breaking news, one Israeli supporter slightly offended, 10,000 times more important than dead Palestinian children. In fact, over 23,000 dead children, we don't give a damn. Why don't you just put it in the graphic and make it easier for us, CNN, the cuck Netanyahu news network. Okay, so, but they said they were hitting Hezbollah, is that right? Let's go back to the New York Times. Many of the strikes took place in residential areas, and affected civilians. So no, it wasn't Hezbollah. They murdered a whole bunch of civilians as usual. One attack on a vehicle near the city of Sidon killed 6 people, including a mother and her 2 children, according to Lebanon's health ministry. Because murdering little children is Israel 101 these days. There's no dispute about it. I mean, how many tens of thousands of children do they have to murder before we say they murdered children on purpose? There's no accident about this. Oh, we're about to get the peace? Bomb the kids, murder their kids so we don't get the peace. That is exactly what they're doing. But most of American news, now not exactly the New York Times. This is like my 8th time giving them credit. My God, if cable news turned around, do you have any idea how much credit I would give them? But they won't do it under penalty of law. So you're not gonna see how, if you turn on cable news now, they'll be like, oh, peace almost happening, oh, our special ally helping along, right? The reality is, no, our special ally is trying to make sure that our economy is pulverized, that people in Iran are killed and that the regime is destroyed. They're trying to start a civil war inside Iran. That might kill hundreds of thousands of people, and Israel thinks, that's beautiful. More dead Muslims, and Iran will be decapitated, and they won't be able to help the Palestinians as we take more of Gaza and more of the West Bank, and all of the Middle East, and all the Arabs and the Muslims and the Christians will be defenseless. That is literally their plan, and they execute it every day, including today. Overwhelming evidence. Oh, we gotta murder kids to get to more war? Murder them! And that's what Israel did. So, and by the way, then the Israeli supporters here in America, they catch feelings. They're like, oh, I can't believe Cenk said that. Oh, like, I mean, they did murder the kids, but they probably, they murdered over 23,000, but they didn't intend it. Because we're the special moral people, and everyone else is evil and hates us. So it's okay if we murder kids. Don't you say it. If you say it, you're a bad person. No. When you do it, you're a bad person. Me doing a news program telling you about how they murder kids is a fact. Them saying, the kids are no big deal. She's sending Israel more money to murder more kids. Oh, I can't believe you stated that accurately. No, you're the real problem for doing the news, Cenk. We have the rest of the news totally under control. Look at cable news pretending we're doing self-defense. But you won't follow the propaganda, Cenk. So you're the real problem, not Israel purposely destroying the American economy and getting us into a war we don't need to be in at all, and they won't let us out. They keep dragging us back in. There's a super easy answer, I'll get to it then, but 2 more quotes. Israel's military offensive in Lebanon threatens to complicate that fragile diplomacy. Now that's as much as the New York Times can say to say, yeah, Israel's the one destroying the peace efforts. So thank you for at least obliquely saying it. So, again, endless, look at me, I get so excited when there's one honest article. And so, by the way, this is now the 3rd one in like the last 2 weeks in the New York Times. So I'm making the mistake of opening up a little bit of hope that the New York Times might go back to doing news. So finally, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel said this week that the country's military was deepening its operation inside Lebanon. Of course, we tell them, hey, we're gonna go to peace. They go, no, we're gonna deepen the war. And remember, bitches, Netanyahu says to us, you don't work, your government doesn't work for you, your media doesn't work for you, they work for me. If I want more war, I'll get more war, is what Netanyahu is obviously saying to us, both through his words and his actions. So what's gonna happen? We're back to, I don't know, because American interests are so badly hurt if this war continues. So we can't continue the war. It'll be catastrophic economically. But we can't get out of the war because Israel has Trump and almost all of Washington by the testicles. And they keep squeezing and squeezing and say, tell everybody you don't work for me. Go back into the war for Israel. That's what you look like. That's what AIPAC looks like. That's what every disgusting warmonger in favor of Israel looks like in this country. More war for Israel, right? God damn it, man, that is not an ally. That's an enemy destroying peace. So how do you get to peace? Super easy. Iran has already offered it to you, and even the New York Times told you. We open up the Strait of Hormuz, they end their nuclear weapons program, they eventually ship out their highly enriched uranium that didn't get to 90%, but it got to 60%. It's probably buried in the facilities, but they've already promised to dig it up and give it to us. It's over, we don't have any more interest. Meanwhile, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a theoretical Democrat, comes out over the weekend on CNN and it's like, well, we have to destroy every ballistic missile and every drone. We have to destroy every drone. What, are you pretending to be against the war? And you want us to stay in the war until every drone of Iran is destroyed? She's a giant liar. She works for Israel. So does Cory Booker, so does Ted Cruz, so does Lindsey Graham. Both parties have been paid an enormous amount of money by the Israeli lobby. And the job of the American press is to lie to you, say, oh no, those millions of dollars they all got didn't affect them at all. Because they're super honest politicians. No, they're not. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is a giant liar who wants the war to continue so the country she loves, Israel, gets what it wants at the expense of America and her voters, because she doesn't give a damn about us, and neither does Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham. So make the deal, cut out Israel, and if Israel wants to continue in Lebanon and Israel and Iran want to have a war, that's their business, not our business at all. Don't come crying to us if you start a war and they say, oh, boo-hoo, I lost a couple of citizens after I murdered thousands of theirs. After I started a war, it's not going that well. I need America to fight it for me. You owe me, America. You owe me dead soldiers. You owe me dead children. You owe me hundreds of billions of dollars. You owe me all the war in the world. And they literally say this, and our leaders go, yes, sir, of course, sir. And our media says, no. Beloved Israel, they're the victims. It's all lies. Israel has caused this war. It's the easiest thing in the world if our politicians and our media weren't all disgustingly corrupt to cut out the cancer. And you don't have to do anything physical, you don't have to do anything bad. All you do is say, hey, I'm for peace and I'm done with you. You guys are a bunch of warmongers who've robbed us blind through these years and driven us into one disastrous war after another. Good luck to you. I'm not doing anything against you. All I'm saying is you're not entitled to our money. You're not entitled to our military. You're a country with a population the size of Papua New Guinea. Please piss off forever. Be a grown-up country and deal with your own problems and your own wars and have your own budget and leave the good American people alone. That's the bare minimum. That's all. We're not asking for much. We're just asking you to stop robbing us and getting us killed in wars. Our media says that's too much to ask for. It isn't. It's the bare minimum we could ask for. And if Israel keeps pushing, one day they might find us as not an ally and not neutral, but something else entirely. So if I was Israel, I'd take neutral and run. But they won't. They'll push us deeper into war and they demand that we pay for it. And when we object, they will call the whole country anti-Semites. And they will say, you are the immoral ones for not agreeing to our wars and to our genocides. You are evil for opposing Israel. Yes, Jake, that's literally what you look like. You look like you're a monster accusing all Americans of being anti-Semites because they won't kneel to your beloved Israel. Again, I keep saying Jake almost like a avatar, but it's almost all of mainstream media and especially cable news. They are the worst of the worst and they obviously work for Israel, Young Turks. All right, guys, I'm reading these blind. Let's go to tyt.com. Salt of the Union says, Cenk Solo, why will he say feckless fiduciary foibles 5 times at Anna's place? Well, you got me to say it once. Bowie Bear says, found out I passed my first exam today after over a decade of not being a formal education. That was great. Then I found out that my favorite game overlay program has been up since 2010, and you guessed it, Tel Aviv. Out of principle, I had to cancel my subscription and remove all the files and packets off my PC. I've been using Overwolf for a year. Can't have anything nice. By the way, some of the VPNs are based out of Israel. That means they have all your porn and all your information. If you think an Israeli company will be moral and scrupulous and not share your information with the Mossad, you're hilarious. But go ahead, take your chances. You buy a single product from Israel, you're taking your chances. How do you know they didn't put a listening device or a bomb? They brag about putting bombs in products all the time. Okay, so keep bragging. Oh, but no, that's another thing. These guys are such unbelievable. Anyway, they say if you don't do trade with Israel, you're evil and immoral. I have to help the Nazis? If I don't give my money to the Nazis, I'm evil? No, there's a great chance you're evil. Anyway, Cenk's Tricep Fury says Netanyahu will not agree, so it ain't happening. That is very likely true and probably a good summary. We'll be right back. All right, guys, not only do we try to do unbiased news, but we try to get sponsors that help with unbiased news. So that's why I'm gonna tell you about Ground News right now. So if you wanna know what's really going on and you see how the stories are being framed, go to Ground News. It's an app and a website that pulls together reporting from across the political spectrum. So you can compare coverage in one place. That's super helpful. You can compare headlines side by side, see the biased distribution of the coverage, check the factuality ratings of the sources, and even find out who owns the outlets reporting on it. If you want to stay informed without getting played by media spin, I think Ground News is a super valuable tool. So go to ground.news/TYT or scan that QR code you're seeing on the screen. And by the way, using our link gets you 40% off the Ground News Vantage plan. It's a giant savings, so jump on it now if you can. All right, and thank you to Lee Middleton for sending 5 Young Turks memberships on YouTube. Let's do the next story.
Cabinet ministers in Israel, supporters of Israel in the United States, making the same case in public from the very first day: kill indiscriminately, move them out. There were discussions on the American right, but what we should do with those Gazans, the people who live there, move them to other countries, Egypt, maybe even the United States, get them out. Kill enough of them that the rest leave. The survivors want to flee. And so the aim was genocidal from the very first day. The Israelis announced it. Israel's supporters in the United States seconded it, amplified it. And members of the US Congress on television, the people who are paying for this genocide, announced proudly, that's right.
That is 100% true and more accurate than anything that cable news has reported since 2023 on this issue. So there's no question he's right. And in fact, we were told by American media, no, Israel's just doing self-defense in Gaza. They're such a helpless little victim taking land. That is an outrageous conspiracy theory and blood libel. You're all anti-Semites. If you ever report the news, we'll ruin you by calling you an anti-Semite. Okay, so I guess they're gonna have to ruin Benjamin Netanyahu because it turns out he's an anti-Semite. Wait, why? Because he just confirmed, yeah, we're taking Gaza. So let me give you direct quotes from News 18 in Israel. You always have to go to Israel to get the real news, because in Israel they report the actual facts. In fact, they often brag about it, like, we murdered the Palestinians and took their land. And they proudly declare that in Israel, and there's oftentimes tapes. And our news outlets look at it and go, oh, no, I'm not getting fired. No, I'm gonna keep kissing Israel's ass, and I'm gonna hide the news from the American people. You're gonna say, well, Cenk, is that fair? Well, let me show you what Netanyahu said, and then you'll see if you ever see it on cable news. He said, quote, we are currently squeezing Hamas He's claiming that there's Hamas, okay, and not the Palestinian civilians. But he clarifies, and is now very important facts that he's revealing. Quote, we now control 60% of the territory in the Strip. You know, we were at 50, we moved to 60. My directive is to move to 70%. He just said it. They're gonna take 70% of Gaza. They've already taken over 60% of Gaza. This was never about self-defense. This was about taking land. We told you that they were never going to leave and they were going to take a portion of Gaza. And we were totally right. The American media told you that it was anti-Semitic to say that. And that's because the American media are a bunch of liars who think that their job is to help Israel do propaganda to deceive the American people. So are you going to report that you were all liars and that Netanyahu actually is taking Gaza? Bragging about taking 70% of Gaza. How come we never see that on cable news? How come we never see that in mainstream media? Is that not relevant? Is it not relevant that they're taking 70% of Gaza permanently? And they've already taken over 60%. They have no intention of leaving. They're destroying all the Palestinian homes and building on top now. So we told you and we were right. So look, are there any consequences for the reporters who are not actually reporters, who've been lying to you for the last 3 years? Is a single one of them ever going to be fired? No, of course not. They won't even report the truth now. So Times of Israel continues. When one audience member shouts out that Israel should take 100% of the territory in Gaza, Netanyahu responds that, quote, we're going in order, but doesn't dispute that this could be the eventual goal. In fact, he says afterwards, first 70%, we'll start with that. Told you. They're gonna try to take 100% of Gaza. And how do you take 100% of a land, or even 70% of a land, when it's got 2.2 million people in it? You do, as Tucker Carlson just explained. You kill enough people and you drive them out of that land through murder, terrorism, fascism, and genocide until you've cleared the place out and stolen it for yourself. While the entire time you got almost all of American media to do what they call hasbara, Israeli propaganda, to lie to good Americans. And by the way, they're not just stealing Gaza's land and Palestinian land, they're stealing your money to use it to steal Palestinian land. Now they say, no, they're not stealing it. They just happen to legally bribe 94% of Congress. And Congress, and they happen to be the #1 donor, lifetime donor to Donald Trump and Joe Biden, just happened to be. And those people made a decision that they would take money out of our paychecks to give to Israel to murder 23,000 kids in Gaza, well over 76,000, but you're gonna see in a minute that that's a very low number. People in Gaza, kill tens of thousands of people, butcher them. Look at Gaza. Look, we have eyes. If you're a report, pretending to be a reporter in America, you know we have eyes and ears, right? You know we could see Gaza. We see it completely and utterly destroyed. In fact, I'm gonna show you more destruction in a second. And American media goes, no, Israel's the victim. Victim, they just stole the goddamn land and now they're bragging about it, dancing on the graves of Palestinian children. Okay, that's who Israel actually is. Israel is a nefarious force that has been robbing us for years. Oh no, we gave them over $320 billion. Why? Why the hell would we give any country? Again, they're the size of Papua New Guinea. Imagine if we gave Papua New Guinea $320 billion, and then you found out Papua New Guinea lobbyists had bribed 94% of Congress legally. Well, wouldn't you say, well, obviously Papua New Guinea paid the congressman to rob us. No, but they said, no, that's not a robbery. Papua New Guinea is our special ally. What does that mean? What does that mean? You see how systematically they've been lying to you your whole life to take your money to take Palestinian land. I appreciate that Netanyahu is now at least confessing. All right, so we continue with the Times of Israel because they have more interesting facts for you. Maps issued by Israel in March showed a new restricted area beyond the 53% of Gaza that Israel controlled after the ceasefire brokered by the US in October. The restricted area, marked on the maps with an orange line, makes up an estimated 11% of Gaza's territory beyond the yellow line, demarcating the part of Gaza occupied by the Israeli troops since the truce. So, okay, I did the math on that, 11% plus 53%. So they now have 64% of Gaza, totally confirmed, and maps put out by Israel. So you don't have to take my word for it. Israel's, both their prime minister and the maps they put out are basically dancing and going, ha, 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 idiot Americans. You just paid me to do a genocide and ethnic cleansing and steal other people's homes, all their worldly possessions, kill their kids, and take their land. Ha ha. But don't worry, no one in America is gonna report it because we own those bitches. Too bad you don't own us. We're telling everybody. That's why they hate the Young Turks. That's why they want to destroy the Young Turks. They attack us 24/7 because they cannot have the news leaking out. They must only have Israeli propaganda pretending to be American news. Sad day for them because the Young Turks is sponsored by which giant billionaire and who. I remember one guy in Washington once told me, "Oh yeah, we'll go after your money." Well, Bob and Susie in Nebraska, $10 at a time through the join button or through tyt.com/join. Join the Young Turks, and that's the power of the American people. We power Young Turks and the entire TYT network, $5 at a time, $10 at a time. So they'll have to go after all of America to take us off the air. Well, it's not like they mind, but now let's take a look at actual reporting to show you, and this is from Al Jazeera. So this is what the Israelis will say is you should trust only American. By the way, they don't even say Israeli media, because like if you listen to the Israeli media, you'll find out what we're actually doing. Only American media that is totally bought by Israel, okay? But don't listen to anybody else. Well, Al Jazeera shows you actual maps, actual video, and actual evidence. So let's see how much Israel's actually taking up Gaza.
As part of a ceasefire deal agreed with Hamas in October 2025, Israel pledged to pull back its troops in Gaza to this, the so-called yellow line. The designated boundary is supposed to limit the movement of the Israeli military inside Gaza. It's marked by these yellow concrete blocks. But a new investigation by Al Jazeera's digital investigations team, SANAD, reveals Israeli forces are instead moving these blocks, thereby expanding their areas of control. Let's first look at where the original line was. Since the ceasefire, Israeli forces started placing these yellow blocks. So far, we've counted 192 along the yellow line. A closer look shows that many have clearly crossed the line. Not only that, they've also been moved. Let's start with the Shujaiya neighborhood in Gaza City. These yellow blocks are now meters away from the designated yellow line, expanding Israel's area of control. Based on testimonies from Palestinians living nearby, these two blue dots represent where two of the blocks once stood. Given the connecting line, it's highly likely this block was moved straight along Al-Sha'af Street, and this one was likely moved from the end of Al-Ghazali Street. After the yellow blocks were moved, Israel carried out large-scale demolitions of buildings in that spot and surrounding area. This was how the Shujaiya neighborhood looked on November 5th, before the yellow blocks were moved. And here it is on December 13th, after the blocks were moved, completely demolished.
That's ethnic cleansing on tape. Anyone who tells you that Israel is not ethnically cleansing the Palestinians out of Gaza is a verifiable liar. They almost certainly work for Israel, and their job is to deceive you, to lie to you on purpose so that you keep paying for Israel's war crimes. So there's more where that came from. Now we're gonna go to Drop Site News. Sharif Abdul Qudus, one of their top reporters, explaining how the structures that they've set up in Gaza. Let's watch.
In January, we first reported with forensic architecture that satellite imagery showed that Israel has begun constructing these berms, these large raised mounds of earth, essentially like walls of earth, to create a physical separation between the area that Israel controls and the area where the Palestinian population has been forced into. And these latest findings that we published yesterday show that Israel has now built more than 25 kilometers of these earthen barriers, physically dividing Gaza along Israel's line of control. And much of this barrier runs west of the yellow line, so it goes even deeper into Palestinian territory. And in places like Jabalia, in northern Gaza, the Israeli military has even created a buffer zone beyond the yellow line, destroying everything in a 300-meter vicinity, creating an effective no man's land west of the line.
If anybody were to share these actual facts with you on a place like CNN, they would be fired immediately. They're like, that's anti-Semitic to show people a map, to show them video, to show them Israel blowing up entire villages at a time, whether it's in Gaza or southern Lebanon. Well, then you'd be a reporter and we'd have to fire you. Okay, so now more from Drop Site News. How many people have they killed since the ceasefire? Remember, theoretically, Hamas released the hostages, that's real. And remember, that was their excuse. Oh, they won't release the hostages. I had to murder 12 billion of them to get 3 guys back, or whatever the numbers were. So that was their excuse. I have to keep killing their kids. They won't give us the hostages. So the hostages came back. They're like, yeah, we were just kidding. We're gonna keep killing them. So how many did they kill since October? More than 900 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza in Israeli airstrikes and shootings, many of them targeted close to the yellow line. That is more civilians, that is more than the number of civilians killed in Israel on October 7th. Just since the ceasefire. Israel will not stop murdering. They're gonna keep on murdering and murdering and murdering and taking more and more land. Those are all facts. But here in America, oh, well, you can't say facts that are offensive to Israelis. Well, that's a capital offense. You'll be fired immediately. Well, thank God I have my own company financed by you guys. Otherwise, I'd be fired too. I mean, Anna was saying perfectly reasonable things on CNN. Oh, look at that, she's no longer on CNN. Someone calls and goes, she's not working for Israel, get her off the air. And all of that, sudden she's off the air. I'm banned on all 3 cable news networks. Why? Started Justice Democrats, one of the largest political groups in America right now, let alone a million other things. We have the largest left-wing digital network, and as a network, we're larger than Turning Point USA, Megyn Kelly, you name it. Joe Rogan. Now, to be fair, we're a network, they're just a show, right? So, but no, you're not allowed. Every online show, no problem. You go skip over to mainstream media, they're like, oh, he won't kiss Israel's ass. That's it, eliminate him. Okay, you guys are so obvious. Have you talked about how Israel never follows a ceasefire? Have you talked about how Israel didn't follow this ceasefire and has murdered 900 Palestinians since the so-called ceasefire? Have you talked about how Israel didn't follow the ceasefire that they signed in 2024 with Hezbollah? That Hezbollah didn't fire a single rocket into northern Israel during that ceasefire, and Israel fired 1,000 bombs on Lebanon during the ceasefire. No, you didn't report that, did you? In fact, I now see all the time, oh, well, Israel started attacking Lebanon when Hezbollah violated the ceasefire and attacked them after the Iran war started. So you're just gonna skip the 1,000 bombs that Israel dropped on Lebanon. Why? Because they're liars. They're paid to lie on behalf of Israel. Meanwhile, Israel never listens to a peace deal and has been murdering the Lebanese and the Palestinians during ceasefires. And as you saw with your own eyes, taking their land, taking their homes, taking everything from them. But if you think that's all bad, wait till you find out what a doctor who's been there has seen. So this is Professor Nick Maynard. He is an upper GI surgeon at Oxford University's Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. He's an associate professor of surgery at the University of Oxford. He went to Gaza. Tucker Carlson talked to him. Let's watch.
What do you think the population of Gaza is right now?
So it's a good question. So the official figures from the Ministry of Health, recognized by the United Nations and indeed recognized by the Israeli military now, is about 76,000 killed by trauma alone. The Lancet Medical Journal, which has published brilliantly
76,000
just from trauma. The Lancet Medical Journal, which has published brilliantly, estimates, because there are many thousands of people buried under the rubble, including friends of mine. So they estimate with great authority, I think, that has underestimated it by about 50%. So there are probably 100,000 killed directly by trauma, but that excludes the excess deaths. We'll remember that term from the COVID pandemic, those people dying of non-COVID related causes like cancer or kidney disease.
Suicide.
In Gaza, there has been no cancer really being treated for 2.5 years. No kidney disease. Many of the dialysis machines in Shifa Hospital were destroyed by the Israeli army when they went in there.
There's sick kids in Gaza now, and they've asked for permission to leave to get surgery. Israel denies the permission. Every day, some of those kids die. So I forget the exact number now, but we covered that story a couple of weeks ago. Every week they have to report dozens of kids that died because they couldn't get very normal treatment that you'd get here in the West or really anywhere. Because Israel's like, no, we're not gonna let out the children who are sick that we know will die if we don't let them out. How is that not intentional? Do you remember the story of how they pulled the plug on the incubators after they bombed a hospital and took it over? Remember in the beginning of the conflict, Israel claimed that, oh my God, it's saying that Israel would bomb a hospital is anti-Semitic and blood libel and never do. They bombed every hospital in Gaza. They destroyed them. They took babies off of incubators. That's literal. What they charged Saddam Hussein of doing, they actually did themselves. And those babies died, of course. And people have cancer, people have all these things. And Israel's like, yeah, they're Palestinians. They should die because we're gonna steal their land. Tucker Carlson is doing a more accurate show than any cable news show in America. And the people that work in cable news and mainstream media should be embarrassed and shamed for the rest of their lives. The way that they've cheerled for this genocide is disgusting. They are deeply immoral people. If you haven't spoken out against this genocide, and you know what happened. If you don't know, I get it. There are tons of people don't know. But if you know and you're in the news business and you've been pretending that Israel's the victim, and you haven't called it a genocide, which it most obviously is, an ethnic cleansing, and you haven't talked about all these kids that Israel intentionally murdered because they're terrorists, and if you only use the word terrorist for Muslims, but you never use it for Israel, even though Israel has killed a minimum of 100 times more civilians, well, then you're not a news person. You're a propagandist for a foreign government. And they should investigate whether you took money from them or why you lied for them. Why has everyone on cable news lied for Israel for these last 3 years? That is a super strange phenomenon. And you could see here the actual facts, there's no dispute. But if you're not sure about how heinous and immoral the current Israeli government is, and let's be honest, the Israeli public is totally in favor of this, overwhelmingly in favor of this. It breaks my heart, I wish they weren't. I wish they'd regain their sanity. But fascism has completely taken over Israel. So they celebrate all of this. Last one.
So there are many, many people dying of excess deaths. Now, the Lancet estimates, again, Lancet estimated 18 months ago that figure was probably about 180,000 on top of the trauma deaths. There are other estimates, and of course these are difficult to be overly accurate, but there are some estimates that it's at least several 100,000. I heard one estimate saying it was over 500,000 excess deaths. Now, even if you just take the first, perhaps conservative Lancet figure of 186,000, when you include the trauma deaths, that's over 250,000. That is well over 10% of the population of Gaza. And the more extreme examples are more than 20% of the population of Gaza. So the population of Gaza on October the 6th, 2023 was about 2.2 million. It's certainly under 2 million now.
So if you're wondering what's the Lancet, is that like some sort of anti-Semitic rag? No, that's one of the most respected medical journals in the world, and the one that they quoted during COVID nonstop. Cable news was like, Lancet Journal, Lancet Journal. If there's one thing you could trust, it's the Lancet Journal. Now Lancet Journal says Israel probably killed 186,000 people in Gaza. They're like, shut up, Lancet Journal. No one ever quote that. If you quote that, you're an anti-Semite. Okay, Lancet Journal should be canceled. Why aren't you quoting it? Why isn't anybody on cable news talking about it? Come on, guys, you get it, right? You get it. We've been the victims of Israeli propaganda our whole lives. Our so-called media, our so-called news outlets have been lying to us on behalf of this tiny little country, size of Papua New Guinea. So, all right. So, guys, when you talk about killing 10 to 20% of the population and taking 64% of their land, well, now we're starting to leave genocide and head towards Holocaust. So genocide is when you target a particular race or religion in whole or in part. That's why this has always been very clearly a genocide. A Holocaust is when you try to wipe out an entire population. Well, Netanyahu just told you they're trying to take 100% of Gaza. That would mean they would have to either kill or ethnically displace everyone in Gaza. That is arguably a Holocaust. Oh, you're not allowed to say it. Kiss my ass, I just said it because it's true. And you people covering up for it and pretending you're offended, you disgust me. You're deeply immoral. You hate Muslims, you're deeply racist and bigoted. And I direct this not to the American people who are wonderful people, and almost all of us now realize how evil Israel is and how they've taken great advantage of us and taken our money to do the most immoral things that have happened in our lifetimes. I direct it at everyone in power in Washington and in American media. You people are disgusting, immoral propagandists who are helping a genocide, and I hope you live in shame for the rest of your life about it. Now, when we come back, I'm going to show you how AIPAC buys our Congress. And if you're offended by that, once again, I refer you to my ass, which you can kiss. We'll be right back. All right, guys, I'm going to go again to our members on tyt.com. All again blind. No Crass says American mainstream media, aka Israeli state media, doesn't even have the Gaza discussion. They keep calling it a ceasefire and acting like hardly anyone is being murdered by Israel now. But to them, 900 Israeli civilians, which is a little bit less than that on October 7th, and then the rest were soldiers, Israeli soldiers. To them, those Israeli lives are worth 800 billion other lives. That's why October 7th, they're like, oh my God, 880 Israelis killed. And I share that outrage with them. Then they're like, oh, since the ceasefire, over 900 Palestinians killed? They're like, don't even report, it's not even news. They're just Palestinians. Their lives are irrelevant. That's how racist everyone on cable news is. I mean, I had a debate the other day, with Jordan, you guys saw it. Chris Hayes once had a guest say genocide. Like, wow, and he's the best of them. The rest are like, crush the Palestinians. Pro-genocide mother effers. Anyway, Bloated Ego says it's manifest destiny, Israeli style. It was a crime the first time we did it, and now we're funding it a second time. Truly disgusting. Cabbage writes in, imagine what a peaceful country could do with $320 billion. If we gave it to Papua New Guinea, it would probably be like a shining castle in the sea. But instead, we gave it to Israel and they destroyed everything in their path to steal more land. Art Guy, I want you to be offended by it. Please tell me you're offended by it so I could laugh in your face. Art Guy says, Trump is keeping the world in Schrodinger's deal, which is both real and fake at the same time, depending on how hard Israel's screwing him behind the scenes. God, that is a brilliant analogy. Schrodinger's deal, I'm gonna try to take that one. Stansdev.com says, why do they bother with graphics for Barak Ravid reporting? They could just create one that says blah, 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 more BS and reuse it over and over. All right, back on TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. One more story for you guys, but before we get there, I want to thank all these beautiful people who just signed up through tyt.com/join. Jay Jennings, Ken Jackson, Brad03, Joe Camel, Jenkat, and a couple of anonymous folks both giving, signing up for membership and giving donations. We definitely desperately need it, and because all the taps have been turned off. When I go to meetings with investors, oftentimes the first question they'll ask me is about Israel. but they don't control the media. And I'm not talking about good Jewish people. They're 63% of Jewish Americans against the Netanyahu government. Tons of them are peace activists. I always want to be super clear. It's the evil Israel supporters that are the problem, okay? And don't tell me you're not evil when you're financing a genocide and you're trying to cancel anyone who would be opposed to a genocide. That's kind of the definition of evil. So again, if you're bothered by that, maybe you should try to be a moral person. But asking an Israeli supporter these days to be a moral person is super difficult. They say, no, everybody's an anti-Semite. Get out of jail free card. Give me a genocide. Give me another genocide. You owe it to me. And if you complain, you're the bad person. No, you're a disgusting, immoral, pro-genocide person if you're still supporting Israel today. You're still back in this? You're disgusting. Okay, history books, you'll be in museums one day. These are the people who said that a genocide was great. Can you believe the banality of evil? But it's not just banality. Can you believe the Goebbels that they unleashed on America to help them finance a genocide? Speaking of which, let's go to AIPAC. So AIPAC has been buying off our politicians for decades. They've given hundreds of millions of dollars to our politicians in campaign contributions, which are legalized bribes. The Supreme Court made them legal. And so AIPAC's not the only one bribing people. Big Pharma does, Big Oil does, but AIPAC's great at it. The Israeli lobby overall was the #1 donor group in this last election. They have given, according to The Guardian, 94% of Congress. And so they buy our politicians for another country. So these days, though, they've changed up tactics because now AIPAC is toxic because we know that if you're lobbying for Israel, you're trying to rob Americans to pay for a genocide. So AIPAC now says the obsession with tracking how individual American citizens support candidates of their choice is outrageous. Is money raised for candidates through Act Blue a loophole, or is it only considered a loophole if pro-Israel Americans are involved? Okay, the Act Blue thing doesn't make any sense. I'm not gonna bother addressing it. It's just a vehicle for how people give money. Act Blue doesn't actually give any money itself. It's just that they know that the right wing hates Act Blue because it mainly raises money for Democrats. Again, it is not a thing. It just allows you to give your money to whoever you want, in this case, into Democratic politics. But they do that to get the right wing angry. Remember, Act Blue bad, Democrats bad. You're funding a genocide with your money. Good, give me your money. Give me your wallet. Give me your wallet, America. That's what AIPAC says nonstop because they're disgusting, outrageous. Supporting a genocide is outrageous. And that's what everyone working at AIPAC is doing right now. If you're working at AIPAC, you're gonna go into a museum one day as the guys who helped finance a genocide. Maybe you'll be next to Goebbels in the exhibits that they have. So, okay, now the reason they're upset is because they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Haley Stevens is one of their bitches, and I don't mean that in a gendered way. I just mean that like Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham are their bitches. So is Donald Trump, so is Joe Biden, so is Mike Johnson, so is Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. They all work for Israel because they've been bribed to the tune of millions and millions of dollars. In fact, I'm gonna show you some of that in a minute. Again, these are legal bribes. Our system is sick. We need to end the corruption, get money out of politics right now. Fightcorruption.us, fightcorruption.us. Get all money out of politics, otherwise the Israelis will own us forever, and so will Big Pharma and the others. So Detroit News writing an accurate article that's got AIPAC enraged about that race with Haley Stevens in it. That's the Senate race in Michigan. They explain, hey, AIPAC has influenced the Michigan US Senate race in recent months by launching fundraising appeals that direct donors to support Stevens' bid in a way that avoids linking contributions to the group by name. Well, say it loud and say it proud. Why are you hiding that you're trying to bribe people for Israel? You didn't hide it all these years. In fact, if you said if anybody's opposed to you bribing politicians, that they were anti-Semites. So, that's not working anymore because you called the whole country anti-Semites, and that one-trick pony just can't ride anymore. So now you're like, okay, let's keep it secret. Okay, pretend you're not with AIPAC. Okay, go ahead, but you make sure that she knows she better work for Israel. And this is not a thing that's new with Haley Stevens. They funded Haley Stevens to the tune of $4 million. But more recently, you'll see her final number in a minute. to destroy and take out Andy Levin, who was the congressman from Michigan. And why did they target Andy Levin? Maybe because they're anti-Semites, since he's a Jewish American. You see, it has nothing to do with religion. They targeted him not because he's against Israel. He says he's a Zionist. He loves Israel. He wants Israel to exist for sure. In fact, he's against the BDS movement. Doesn't want Israel sanctioned or boycotted or anything. His crime was saying the Palestinians are also human, and they should also have a state. They're like, eliminate them, and they did. And they brought in Haley Stevens, who's a paid representative for Israel, not for Americans, then not for Michigan. So Detroit News clarifies, as we do, the practice is legal and permitted under campaign finance laws. Not just giving the money, but hiding where it's coming from, because our country's a joke now, thanks to the Supreme Court. They say, oh yeah, not only can you bribe people, corporations can, foreign governments can, but you could also keep it secret so that no one knows who's bribing our officials, so they could do your dirty work and betray their voters. But the Supreme Court works for the Chamber of Commerce and foreign governments. Congratulations. The sick, corrupt Supreme Court. All right, Detroit News continues. The group is openly pushing for its backers to support Stevens as a pro-Israel candidate for US Senate, hosting a fundraising page for her on its website that's paid for and authorized by Stevens' campaign. So there is absolutely no question, it is the Israeli lobby. About 31% of donors who gave at least $200 to Stevens' Senate campaign also donated to AIPAC since the start of 2025, according to disclosures through March 31st. So they're saying, pretend you're not with AIPAC, give it. Now, but at the same time, give me money for AIPAC. In other races, they don't care, so we're just gonna do that. And they're like, okay, yeah, here's checks. So work for Israel, work for Israel. Make sure American representatives don't work for America, they work for Israel. So they sent check after check, but if you report on the checks, they say, oh, that's anti-Semitic. You can't say that. You have to lie on behalf of Israel's supporters, and you have to pretend that they're not bribing our officials and our politicians, but they are bribing them. Again, it's legal, but if you think they're not getting bought for millions of dollars, you don't know anything, or you're an American reporter. Okay, so more from Detroit News. Her campaign has also seen a recent uptick in fees paid to Democracy Engine LLC, a donation processing platform used by AIPAC. Okay. I find that to be the least persuasive, but that's also a fact you should know. Now, given the group's stated fee structure, they try to figure out how much, this is where it becomes relevant, how much she might have gotten. Stated fee structure of 3.7% to 6%. That means Stevens has raised between 2.2 million and 3.6 million of her nearly 9 million in Senate fundraising so far via the platform. So, but liars in American media will tell you, oh no, $2 to $3 million. Our politicians in America are so pure. They're like angels. They'd never be corrupted by a couple of $1 million. So they say it's anti-Semitic to report that she might be affected by that. No, the reality is Haley Stevens works for Israel, not for Michigan. And by the way, since she's been in Congress, she voted with Israel every time. Well, that is so surprising. I'm sure it's a coincidence. I can't follow the money at all. I'm kidding, I'm not a mainstream media reporter. I can follow the money, I'm not an idiot or a propagandist for Israel, which almost all of them are. So an unknown share of that money could come from groups other than AIPAC, because groups like Give Green, Women Count, and National Retail Federation PAC also use Democracy Engine. Again, they're being fair. And that's good context for you guys to know. Okay, so now we go to Lisa Slotkin. Now Slotkin is a Democrat, also from Michigan. And so she also supports Israel, and she's also taken money from AIPAC. So let's see what her unbiased opinion on this is. She says there are all kinds of groups spending money in this race. There'll be even more once we get to the general election, but AIPAC is hardly the only group spending money in this race, and spending it through, I don't know what to call it, through different means. In other words, don't look at AIPAC, don't look at AIPAC. All right, you want me to look at Big Pharma? Because I bet you're also getting money from Big Pharma. Elise Slotkin is a corporate Democrat. She doesn't care about you guys at all. All she cares about is all over. Elise, I'm being fair, okay? I should say Elisa, I guess. You'll work for anybody. You'll work for money for any lobby, including AIPAC. She says, I understand that AIPAC has become a flashpoint, but they have a right, like all these other groups, to get involved in these races. Yeah, they all have a right to buy us, she says. I get bribed by everybody, Senator Slotkin says. Why can't I get bribed by Israel? I don't even have to get bribed by them. I love them so much more than America anyway. You're not allowed to say that. Yeah, I am. I just said it. You work for Israel. You also work for Big Pharma and any other organization that'll bribe you. How much did they bribe Slotkin? $491,000. It's relatively small for a US senator, since Slotkin has shown throughout her entire career that she loves and adores Israel. So that's just money that they give to her to defeat anyone who doesn't love and adore Israel, because she'd have done it probably for free. So now, well, how about back to Haley Stevens? Is it fair to say that she's got a special relationship with Israel? Well, let's find out. Oh, look at that, Haley Stevens. Could have put it back up, and then we'll give you her quotes. $5.5 million for the Undertaker's wife. $5.5 million. But the liars who call themselves reporters in mainstream media say that would never affect her. I mean, just please fire yourselves. You've got to be so embarrassing to work in mainstream media. Every day you do like, oh, I showed up to work. More propaganda for Israel, yes. Every American is an anti-Semite. All the Democrats are, all the Republicans are, all the voters are. Israel is the greatest. They don't affect our politicians at all. Can I write that she took $5.5 million? No, I'm sorry, of course not. I know I'll be fired. No, it doesn't affect her at all. I'm gonna give the Detroit News here a ton of credit. Way to do real journalism and report all these facts. If everybody was like Detroit News, I'd be thrilled with journalism coming back in America. Let's go to Haley Stevens' comments and find out what she thinks herself.
In the United States Congress, I will continue to fight for the people of Israel. I will continue to fight for Israel's existence. Israel comes to me in my dreams. I see Israel's future, and I know that Israel will continue to exist for the Jewish people.
Did you for a second think that she was going to say, I'm going to continue to work for the people of Michigan? Of course not. Don't be silly. She sees Israel in her dreams. Well, if they gave me $5.5 million, I might see Israel in my dreams too. But cable news are like, I don't know what you're talking about. Haley Stevens works for America. Does she? No. Like 94% of Congress, she works for Israel. Okay, I'm gonna give you two last facts here, but the person you should vote for, in my opinion, is Abdul El Sayed in that race. How do you know Abdul El Sayed won't work for Israel? His name is Abdul El Sayed. He doesn't take any money from AIPAC. He's Muslim American. He's got no love for Israel, and and American media hates him. They're like, oh my God. Oh, geez, a Muslim. We're so worried about bigotry towards Jewish Americans, but Muslim, you can't trust him. He doesn't even work for Israel. That's exactly why you should trust him. There's a third person in the race who's like, who's like AIPAC light. She's realized, taking money from AIPAC, not a good idea. But before, when she was thinking of taking money for AIPAC, the third candidate in the race that's supposed to be the moderate choice. Oh, Abdul, he's Muslim, you can't vote for him. Okay, I get it, you're angry at AIPAC, you don't want to vote for Haley. Vote for her. Okay, I don't even want to give her name. You know what she did? She wrote a policy paper for AIPAC. I'm not talking about Haley Stevens. I'm talking about the other one pretending not to be for AIPAC. Wrote a policy paper for AIPAC that AIPAC declared was excellent. Okay, no, there's only one person who's an American in that race, Abdul El Sayed, and who will represent American voters. So AIPAC just sent out an email, we got that too. A contribution right now to defend Haley Stevens and Susan Collins will send a clear message that we will not let extremists rewrite the future of this relationship, meaning between America and Israel. They just sent that out. Susan Collins is a Republican. See that? They don't care, Republican, Democrat. They don't have anything that they care about other than getting all of our representatives in both parties to work for Israel. Now, when you say obvious things like that and you quote them, there they are, Democrat, Republican, we don't care, they just have to serve Israel. America's media goes, don't. If you report their words, you're an anti-Semite. Because obviously, to say that AIPAC is giving all this money on behalf of Israel, what does AIPAC stand for? Oh, we figured it out, we deduced it. It's American Israel Public Affairs Committee. It's not American-Norway Public Affairs Committee. It's not American-Paraguay Public Affairs Committee or Electric Utilities Public Affairs Committee, or we're doing this for your Health or Charity Public Affairs Committee. It's in the name. We are buying American politicians for Israel. I know that was so complicated. That's why not a single mainstream media reporter in the country figured it out. They're like, who do they work for? I can't tell. I can't tell at all. I should take that back. Detroit News figured it out. Thank you, Detroit News. Don't vote for people who say they'll work for another country and not your own. This is not rocket science. In fact, I'll give you one last place you can go. Sign a pledge saying, I'm never gonna vote for anyone who takes a dime from the Israeli lobby, okay? Not another dollar.com, not another dollar.com. You give them $1, that's it. They work for Israel, I got no interest in them. They give $1 to Israel, they give more bombs to kill more people to Israel. No, never gonna vote for you. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. The only thing I care about is, are you an American who's representing American interests, or are you betraying us to serve another country for money? If you are, you'd have to have your head examined to vote for these Israelis, young Turks.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Rich and powerful men abusing, assaulting, and abandoning young women. These rich and powerful men donate to the politicians in Washington, D.C., play golf with the elites in Washington, D.C. They are foreign leaders who we don't want to offend. They interact with our intelligence agencies that we don't want to disobey. There is something rotten in Washington.
And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
All those congressmen you just saw there are on the record as protecting the child rapists who were clients of Epstein. They have not prosecuted a single person outside of Epstein and Maxwell.
Yep.
Not one.
Is Trump engaging in this cover-up because he's in the Epstein files?
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff.
So as the government keeps telling us, yeah, there's other people. Yeah, they raped those girls. So what? We're gonna cover up for them. But why are you guys so mad?
A nation that chooses impunity for the rich and the powerful at the expense of our children is a nation that has lost its moral purpose. Are you on the side of the people? Are you on the side of America's children? Or are you on the side of the rich and powerful who've had their thumb on the scales and shafted Americans for decades?
The rest of the news media says you should not fight for positive change. If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist, because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere. That's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one.
Who do you guys use?
We have AT&T.
And how much do you pay per month?
$345, and that includes a company discount.
How many people?
5 phones.
$70 a line, right? I've started a wireless company called Noble Mobile that is trying to cut everyone's bills in half.
What would like a family of 4 cost?
The average Noble Mobile user is paying $42 a month, but also they're using their smartphone 17% less.
Okay, how does that work out?
We give you $20 back in cash every month based upon how much data you use or don't use. You know when you're doom scrolling or messing around on your phone, you're like, oh wait, I'm actually costing myself money right now. The goal with Noble Mobile is to encourage us to look up at our children's lovely faces, like touch grass, appreciate life. A friend of mine calls these things are rectangles of sadness. So we're trying to change that and improve everyone's relationships with their phones.
It's a very noble cause.
Well, thank you, sir. That's what it is.
Been on YouTube for 20 years.
The original political partner on YouTube, the Young Turks.
The Young Turks.
The Young Turks.
Godfather of independent media.
Favorite news platform by far. Oh, it's not even close.
The Young Turks. It's the largest online news show in the world.
I watched you guys before I had a channel at all.
And I watched Cenk, so Cenk's really the start of it all.
Big shout out to Cenk from Young Turks.
Cenk Uygur, founder of TYT, a man who probably needs no introduction.
Cenk, so great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you, David.
Fan of your work for a long time, man.
Anna Kasparian is one of the most followed and influential progressive women online.
I love Anna.
Your presence has been essential for me to really grow.
Do all of you know the Young Turks? This is why what Young Turks are doing is so important.
I've watched you for many years. You are insightful. I thank you for that.
I was going to introduce myself, but it sounds like you guys might know it.
I hereby double down.
All right, back on TYT. Cenk Uygur, Yasmin Ali Khan with you guys, also on Rebel Headquarters. Check that out on YouTube. First, a couple shout outs, Norman Sanchez and Sid Life 365. Thank you so much, guys, for hitting that beautiful join button below the video on YouTube. Everybody can join at tyt.com/join. Lee Middleton, thank you for sending 5 memberships through YouTube. Something. Thank you for 10. And Uma Karam, thank you for 50. That is amazing. Uma Karam, I'm going to read your super chats a little bit later in the show. Meanwhile, Patrick O, thank you for the donation through super chat. Cliff Campen wrote in Keep the Faith. Thank you, brother. G Walker, Stand Strong TYT. Thank you guys. You guys are amazing and you power our show and you're why we're invincible. Yaz, let's do the next story.
All right, if you guys remember E. Jean Carroll, we got some of her going. Let's see.
The Justice Department, CNN is learning, has launched a new criminal investigation into one of Trump's enemies, E. Jean Carroll. Now, E. Jean Carroll was the former magazine columnist who accused President Donald Trump of sexual assault. Ended up being that he was liable for sexual abuse. The source is telling CNN that the investigation now is focused on whether Carroll committed perjury during her 2 civil lawsuits against the president.
Are you kidding me? So he was adjudicated as having sexually assaulted her. And now he's going to assault her with the Department of Justice. Have you ever seen a more corrupt, disgusting guy than this? All right, Yaz has all the receipts for you guys.
Okay, so as Cenk said, Trump was actually found guilty, not just of sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll, but also of defaming her after the fact. So he and his supporters, of course, still insist that despite all of the evidence that came out during the trial, and despite the verdict itself, he is still innocent, of course. So now he is attempting to call E. Jean Carroll a liar and call all of her credibility into question. So here are some of the details. Let's watch.
Our sources tell us that this investigation is focused on a 2022 deposition that Carroll gave, where she said that she had not received any outside funding. Now, her lawyers later told the judge that she had in fact received funding for legal fees and expenses from billionaire Reid Hoffman. The judge overseeing this case ultimately said there were no issues with her credibility and blocked Trump lawyers from asking about this at trial. Now, Carroll currently has multiple legal battles with Trump currently pending, including one before the Supreme Court. Now, notably, Aaron, the Supreme Court has deferred 12 times on a decision whether they want to take up that case.
So just a friendly reminder that while our Justice Department is investigating E. Jean Carroll, our Justice Department is not currently investigating anyone mentioned in the Epstein files. Also, Trump was found guilty of sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll, but now she's being referred to as, what was it? One of Trump's enemies. How about that? So as you just heard, Trump is not claiming that she lied about any of her claims about him. He's not saying that she's lying about what she claims he did to her, but prosecutors are now alleging that she lied about having no outside funding for her lawsuit, even though billionaire Reid Hoffman was actually helping her pay some of the legal fees and expenses, okay? So in a 2022 videotape deposition, Carroll told the then Trump attorney, Alina Habba, that no one else was paying for her legal fees. But 2 weeks before the trial, Carroll's attorney informed the judge and Trump's lawyers that they secured funding from Hoffman's nonprofit. Carroll's lawyers said that she never met nor had any conversations with anyone associated with the nonprofit. Habba did say in court at the time that Carroll's team conspired to conceal the truth for nearly 6 months. And again, at the time, the judge said it was not an issue. So this isn't anything new that we're hearing about. We heard about it back then when the trial was ongoing. And the trial just went on as originally intended. And as you heard from the reporter, the judge blocked any questioning pertaining to the payments and Reid Hoffman during the trial. So now, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, he is kind of a wild card here right now. He has been leading Trump's retribution campaign ever since Pam Bondi was released from her duties. So he is now in the role of AG, but he has recused himself from this case because during the E. Jean Carroll case, he was working on that as one of Trump's personal attorneys. So he's not involved in any of this. Meanwhile, E. Jean Carroll is still trying to get the money that she won from Trump during the first 2 trials. She was awarded $5 million in her sexual assault case. And then she also won $83 million for her defamation case. And of course, Trump has not paid her any money. He has already appealed the $5 million and he is planning to appeal the $83 million. Cenk, this is obviously just such a waste of everybody's time. We have already gone to court over this, and it's almost like this doesn't, it almost invalidates our entire justice system if he can just say, no, I'm not gonna pay it.
Yeah, so this is MAGA being like mainstream media, telling us that, oh, it's just a coincidence that the Department of Justice happens to be going after all of Donald Trump's enemies. Really, bro? It's a coincidence? Like that they were like scouring the country for who are the worst criminals, right? By the way, if you don't know, Donald Trump fired almost all the people pursuing white collar crime across many different agencies. So if you're stealing millions of dollars, maybe even billions, free to go. And in fact, that's literal. Not only did he fire the people investigating fraud, but he pardoned a great number of white collar criminals who were convicted of fraud and stealing millions and millions of dollars from the average American. So that's all totally fine. But just, we couldn't find them. Well, we happen to find every single political enemy and personal enemy of Donald Trump. And then on these knick-knack made up charges. Why do I say that? So on this one, you heard Yaz tell you, E. Jean Carroll's lawyers themselves told the court, oh, we just got money from Reid Hoffman's nonprofit. Wow, they seem like they're hiding it so much. So that's what you're gonna pin your hopes on? Well, that could be a little bit, kind of tiny bit. I mean, look at what they did with Hassan and Code Pink. They don't care that they went to Cuba. They care that Code Pink and Hassan Piker won't stop talking about Israel. And Code Pink has done protests, and I think people are familiar with Hassan. And so, what do? Oh, you guys stayed at the wrong hotel in Cuba. The tiniest violation ever. Be careful if you say it's a super important one, because it turns out Hassan and Code Pink didn't stay at that hotel. Right-wing Nick Shirley did. And they're not pursuing Nick Shirley. Why? If that's such a big, terrible crime, why aren't they going after the culprit? We found him, it's Nick Shirley. Because they're only going after Trump's political opponents and Israel's political opponents. So now, but to do it to a person you sexually assaulted, I mean, look, there's 2 things about that, yes. Number one is, it is so incredibly petty and bitter and vindictive. And what a disgusting man. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't get away with sexually assaulting her. That's it. Try to pin some nonsense on her, put her in jail, take her freedom away. Why? Because she hurt his stupid ass ego. He's an unbearable guy, unbearable. So the second part is to destroy our system of laws and justice, to turn into like kangaroo courts and to totally junk the Department of Justice and turn it into his legal Gestapo to go after all of his enemies on the tiniest little things. And as you made a brilliant point there, this is a big major crime, but the guys who rape children with Epstein is not a big deal. We shouldn't even investigate them. We shouldn't pursue them. Come on.
That's what they said. They said there's nothing to see here. There's no credible evidence that anyone could possibly have to go off of in order to even investigate any of the people in the Epstein files, apart from Jeffrey Epstein himself, who is dead allegedly, and also Ghislaine Maxwell, who allegedly is looking to get out of prison and get some kind of plea deal. So that is what our Justice Department has been reduced to. And all of this it's so crazy, like with Trump and his retribution campaign is so immature, so childish. And he said that going into this presidential term that he was going to be on his revenge tour. He was going to go after all of his enemies, all the people who ever did anything to him. And again, I made the point earlier, it is crazy that this woman who he was found guilty of sexually assaulting is now listed as one of his enemies that he needs to go after. This is a woman who went against Donald Trump and won because she had a case against him because he did something really, really terrible to her. And then he continued to be terrible towards her when he went on defaming her while he was on the presidential campaign, if I recall correctly. So it's really unbelievable that we're here. Although at the same time, it's really not that unbelievable. But really, this is a waste of everybody's time. This is a waste of money. It's a waste of resources. The fact that there are no competent people still working in our Justice Department is actually unjust, which is the irony of it all. But it really is all by design. This is exactly what they wanted. They wanted Trump. From the moment that he appointed his lackeys to be the attorney general, he had Pam Bondi there. Her job was just to do whatever Donald Trump wanted her to do, to the point that I think the American people might have started to forget that the attorney general is not supposed to work directly for the president. They work for us. They're supposed to be separate, but those lines have been so intentionally blurred over just like the past few years with Donald Trump at the helm of this country that, it's going to be very hard to rebuild all of these institutions once he is finally out of office.
Yeah. So look, last thing on this for me is this one enrages me. So it's one thing when he lets out the white collar criminals who probably robbed your grandmother and stuff, and that's already super frustrating. And he represents a different country, not our country, gets us into disastrous wars. We all have to pay so much more because he's so corrupt. But for some reason, for understandable reason, to assault her like that, and then to say, "No, I'm not done with you yet. I'm gonna hurt you more." It shows a moral sickness that's inside of him. And so that's why I've been against Donald Trump from day one. To me, it was obvious that this is a very indecent, very immoral person. You cannot put someone this deeply immoral in charge of a country. It'll lead to disastrous results, and it has.
Yeah, and not just that, Cenk. It's so icky and predatory. Like he knows that he's not debating the actual verdict. He's not trying to call that into question. He's not appealing the actual decision from either of those cases. He's saying that she lied about something else, something that was at the time brought up during the trial. So it's just the fact that he's going after her. It is just, frankly, it's just a man who is abusing his power in the most unbelievable, childish, and just like ickiest way. And I don't think there's another word for it. I wish I had a better word than icky, but that is it makes my skin crawl. That's what it is.
All right, guys, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, speaking of icky, we're gonna go to Dr. Jill Biden. Stunning admission from her, except it's not stunning except for the fact that, again, everyone in media lied on her behalf when we told you that she was who she is. Anyway, find out that story when we come back.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
All right, so let's go to Super Chat. I promised Uma Karam's comments, so I'm gonna read these blind too. Hello from Lebanon. Cenk, buddy, these Israelis problem for everyone. Problem is for everyone tries to use them or get something out of them. I'm glad you Americans are finally waking up to it, especially from the right. Whoops, spent extra 50 for the same message, but TYT, you deserve every dollar you get. Thank you. Look, I even read that. Burgundy will read anything in the super chat. We agree with all you guys say, except Hezbollah. We do not see as a terrorist entity. It's not an Iranian militia in Lebanon. I mentioned to you and Anna back when the war here was in full swing, and mentioned to you guys the borders between Lebanon and Israel, no shots fired from Israel's inception all the way to 1976. Lebanon did not take part of the Jordanian, Egyptian, Syrian war. And from Israel's inception all the way to 76, he said that. We agree with all you guys except, no, he said that too. Okay, that's why he said it. He sent it in again. So guys, like, some people from Lebanon hate Hezbollah depending on where they're from and what side of the ethnic divide, etc., that they're in. And a lot of people love Hezbollah, and you say, "Oh my God, they're all terrorists." No. Hezbollah defends Lebanon. So if you say they also attack Israel, okay. And so we can get into all the different nuances about should they kill civilians, should they not, how much care did they take in not killing civilians, etc. So I'm not trying to defend that. I'm just telling you, there's also another part of Hezbollah, which is to defend Lebanon. Again, our media are a bunch of liars, and they never tell you that because the terrorists are the ones invading Lebanon and killing way more civilians than Hezbollah, and those terrorists are called Israel. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Yaz with you guys. Yaz, what's next?
Up next, we have Dr. Jill Biden. Haven't heard from her in a while, so let's see what she has to say.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Why?
Oh, that's about the most ironic thing you'll ever see, because we're about to show you that everything that Jill Biden said in that speech was a lie. In fact, she admitted it. Tell us about it, Yaz.
Yeah, so it's wild, and you gotta have the context a little bit. That was Dr. Jill Biden, of course, and that was immediately after that disastrous debate between her husband, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump. And this was back during the 2024 presidential campaign. They only had one debate between the two of them before Joe Biden dropped out. But you know what, benefit of the doubt, you might be thinking, of course she's gonna back up her husband, and of course she's gonna gas him up following that debate. She probably actually believes everything she's saying there because she loves her husband and she believes in him. But apparently, no, these people are all just a bunch of liars. So 2 years after all of this, 2 years later, Dr. Jill is now promoting a book. So naturally, she is dropping some crumbs because she wants to entice us all. And her book drops next week. So while on her promotional tour, she mentioned that during the 2024 debate, what she really thought was that her husband was actively having a stroke on that stage. So Joe Biden did not drop out of that race until 3 weeks after that debate. And during that entire time, Biden and his surrogates, including his wife, insisted that he was absolutely fine and fit for office. So I'll show you what she actually said. Let's watch.
Were you horrified as you saw it unfold?
I wasn't horrified, I was frightened because I had never, ever seen Joe like that. Before or since? Never.
Or since?
Yes, or since.
You've never seen him like that?
Never, no.
What happened?
I don't know what happened. I mean, as I watched it, I thought, oh my God, he's having a stroke. And it scared me to death.
So just a reminder, at the time, Joe Biden's debate performance was so bad that both Democrats and Republicans were calling it out. There were calls from across the aisle for Joe Biden to drop out of the race, including from Cenk. You were very vocal about that, if I recall. And immediately after the debate at a fundraiser, his wife also had this to say about it. Even she was trying to defend him. She said, "So let's talk about last night's debate because I know it's on your minds. As Joe said earlier today, he's not a young man. And after last night's debate, he said, Jill, I don't know what happened. I didn't feel that great. And I said, look, Joe, we are not going to let 90 minutes define the 4 years that you've been president.
Oops.
And that's fair. 90 minutes doesn't have to define your entire presidency, but don't act like that was a good debate performance when everyone can see that it was not, and that he was not okay, and that he was not fit for the presidency. And just a quick refresher before I get your thoughts on this, Cenk, I do want to take a moment to remind our viewers of exactly how that debate went.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare, and I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
What I did, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare for us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies, dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people out of their houses. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay. Thank you. And by the way,
so every day.
That was hard to watch, and it was hard to watch at the time. And again, for 3 weeks, it was actually 24 days after that, they insisted that he was fine. And it took him that long to finally drop out of the race, at which point the primaries had already passed. So they just gave us Kamala Harris. It was a controversial decision to say the least. Cenk, what are your thoughts on Dr. Jill Biden coming out and confessing this 2 years after the fact?
I think Jill Biden is one of the worst people in the country, and I don't hesitate in saying that. So I'm gonna come back to her in a second. You're right, I certainly vocally oppose Biden to say the least. We did a petition that a lot of you guys signed a year before that debate, because it was obvious, it was super obvious. He would give speeches and forget everything. He would shake hands with invisible people. And all of American media pretended he was totally fine. As long as someone in power says something, the morons in American media will just regurgitate it. They're not reporters at all. So then afterwards, Jake Tapper did that comical book, like OJ, like If I Did It. Like, yeah, bro, don't tell me that you found the culprit. I know who the culprit is, it's you. It was cable news, it was mainstream media who covered up for that. So I was so desperate to get Biden out of the race that I ran against him as a protest candidate. Now, guys, at the time when we did the petition, then I run, and everybody's saying, "Oh, you're nuts. Joe Biden is in great shape. He's the best. Not only can he beat Donald Trump, they would constantly said he's the best Democrat in the country to beat Donald Trump." I heard that a million times. So I was super animated back then. You see me, if you watch the Young Turks regularly now, super animated about Israel, etc. Why? Because when there is something that is plainly obvious and everyone else gaslights you, come to the Young Turks, because we're not gonna gaslight you. Our job is to actually deliver the news for you, and I will get angry on your behalf. So when that was happening, I'm like, why do we wanna lose to Trump? I don't wanna lose to Trump. All these guys telling me that Trump's a fascist and he's gonna destroy the country. Okay, fine, great. I agree, I'm super worried about Donald Trump, right? They're like, but we're okay with Joe Biden. I'm like, well, how could you be okay with that guy running against him? What is wrong with you guys? They're like, nope, perfectly healthy. Jill Biden told us, and Joe Biden told us, and they're in power. We all have to bow down to people in power. No, we don't. We could actually challenge their lies. And in fact, in journalism, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. So we did that super aggressively on the Young Turks. And by the way, as always, when we tell the truth, it hurt us. People attacked us, oh, they're not really on the left, they're trying to help Trump. I'm like, why do you want to lose to Trump? They're like, shut up, we're in the middle of losing to him. Okay, tell everybody that Cenk's a right winger and Anna's a right winger, and they're trying to help Trump by getting a competent candidate against him who could actually win. But no, nobody listened. Everybody in power lied. Everyone in media lied. Oh, he's perfectly fine. Now, let's get to Jill Biden, one of the worst liars in the country. And here's my rankings for top egomaniacs in the country. Trump is number one because he's just invincible on that category. Everything's about him, right? But Joe Biden is a close number two. Did Joe Biden not know his mental condition? No, he knew it, but he didn't care. He was like, I'm gonna hold on to power. I don't care if I have no brain left. I don't care if I can't say a single sentence. I don't care if I'm not running the country and Jill's running the country and for domestic policy and Blinken is running foreign policy for Israel. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna lie to the American people as long as it's about me, 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 me. My party loses, who cares? The country loses, who cares? Joe Biden kept talking about how we were gonna lose democracy itself if Trump won. But meanwhile, privately, he's thinking, who cares? Who cares as long as I stay in power? Oh, another Democrat could do a better job of beating Trump and who cares? Me, 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 me. One of the largest egomaniacs in American history. Number 3 on that list is Jill Biden. No, I'm gonna keep power. You look super evil. American media told us, oh, Jill Biden, what a beautiful, lovely person. Now I wanna break down the 2 lies there, yes. Because the one lie is obvious. She said on that stage, and she said in all the interviews afterwards, no, Joe's fine. He was great in the debate. He's totally fine. He's in fantastic shape, and he nailed it in that debate, right? Now she says, oh yeah, I was lying. I thought he had a stroke in the middle of the debate. Okay, thank you for admitting that you're a pathological liar and that you did it for your ego, right? But there's the second set of lies that I think are even worse because she's still lying today. She's like, oh, it never happened before the debate and it hasn't happened since the debate. Why is she saying that? Oh, because she wants to cover her tracks. Oh no, I didn't see it before the debate. I wasn't trying to secretly run the country myself because my husband's brain fell out of his ear. He can't think at all, so I made all the decisions. Do you know that Dr. Jill Biden sat in on interviews for cabinet level positions? She was running the country, not Joe. And she wanted to keep it that way. So that's why she's lying to you today. I'm glad she's so greedy that she wanted to sell some books, so she's accidentally telling on herself. And then nothing happened since the debate. He's perfectly cogent since then. Oh, first of all, we saw him after the debate. He was a hot mess back then. And if that's true, and if Dr. Jill Biden and Joe Biden would like to prove me a liar, I've been very tough on them. They can come on the Young Turks and I'll interview Joe Biden and see if he's up to it. Now he's not gonna do that. He's not gonna do it with the Young Turks, but honestly, he's not gonna do it with anyone. You know why? Because he has dementia. And he's had it for a long, long time. And Dr. Jill Biden has been hiding it the whole time. Because she's a terrible person who's a giant egomaniac and a disgusting liar who endangered her party, her voters, and her country for her own ego. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just so confused as to how she thought this revelation would go over. What did she think the dialogue would be after she admitted that she thought he was having a stroke during that debate performance? We all watched it with her and we all remember the way that they excused it immediately after the fact, and up until now, really, they're still defending that. They're saying, "Oh, he still would have been better than Trump." Like maybe, I don't know. It's such a weird argument. It was such a weird place that we found ourselves as a country. We never should have been in that position in the first place when we have 2 80-ish-year-old men fighting for the presidency of this country. Like neither of them should have been up there on that stage, standing at those podiums. And honestly, I really am just so sick of these people holding our entire country hostage and by extension, the entire world just for the sake of their own egos or for their own bank accounts. It's really just tired at this point. And for Joe Biden, he was willing to lie to everyone, including himself, and refuse to step down when he obviously should have, just for the sake of his 80-year-old ego. It's unbelievable. And then for everyone who has come to his defense, right? All of those people, and then the people who have come and gone from government, people who once had positions of authority, people who once had an inside inside information and inside track to actually know what was going on. They just withhold all the information at the time that it is relevant and pertinent to the American people, just because they're planning to write a tell-all book later to make some money. They're saying, you know what, we have a lot of information that would be really helpful to everybody right now, but I'm not gonna come out and say it. Instead, I'm gonna sell it back to you after the fact, after when I no longer have any consequences that can get me, or until, even if I wanted to do something, there's nothing that I can do anyway because I'm no longer in that position of authority. And that's the thing that I think doesn't get talked about a whole lot, is once you admit to something, you kind of have to do something about it, especially when you're in a position of power, which is, I think that's one of the main reasons why we don't hear our Congress people actually say the things that we need them to say out loud, because the minute that they say something, they have to stand by it and people expect them to act on it. And sometimes they just don't want to for whatever reason. They have lobbied interests, they have personal interests, they have monetary interests, whatever it is, they don't want to do the thing that they were elected to do. And so they just don't say the things that they need to say.
All right, we're gonna end on a lighter note, give last word to one of our members on tyt.com. If you want to be part of the show and have your comments read, tyt.com/join. Don Dada Dragon says, I'm currently stoned and I don't even know what Joe said. No, I love it. All right, we're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, CBS fired anyone who might be American. So I love how everybody's pretending that CBS is not an Israeli propaganda outlet still, but we'll tell you all about it when we return.
I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
All right, guys, reading these blind as well. Let's go to Super Chat again. Pakistani American Hawk Sentinel said, as an American, I want the ICC to treat Biden and Trump administrations the same. The US has remade the Arab Holocaust led by Israel. I approve of NATO countries under the Rome Statute pressuring the ICC to issue an arrest warrant for Trump. Netanyahu and the rest of the war criminals are like Michael from Halloween. Like in the sci-fi movie, a monster gets thrown into granulator, just saying, but this guy's equivalent to Michael from Halloween. Well, Netanyahu, that's a fair analogy, is a monster who's killed way more than any serial killer in the movies or in real life in America. He's killed tens of thousands of innocent civilians, tens of thousands of children. He's one of the biggest serial killers of my lifetime. And this deeply evil, sick man has been financed by our money. Your money, my money. Our entire lives, our politicians have been robbing us to give it to one of the worst serial killers of our lifetimes. Those are all facts. Ronald Fan says, hey TYT family and to you, Cenk. When I watch Anna on Candace Owens' show, she says about sometimes things are going your way and things are not going your way, or ending the war on Gaza. 100. Yeah, things are not going our way on ending that war, that's for sure. Yes, Anna was on Candace Owens. Yes, I think that drops today. Yes, I was on Diary of a CEO and that also dropped today. Check out both, they're interesting conversations. If you say we're not allowed to talk to Candace Owens, you're not the boss of us, okay? And if folks are offended by it, that's their problem, not our problem. John Doherty says Netanyahu's a power mad megalomaniac. That's obviously true. We're doing a worldwide egomaniac competition. Netanyahu's the only one that could beat Trump and Biden. The Green New Dealer Dragon says CNN calls itself the corrupt news network for a reason.
If you don't like your kids that much, or if you don't like them at all, which happens on occasion, don't worry about it.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Yas. If you're on YouTube, not only do we read YouTube member comments, but we also read super chats during the commercial breaks. And the members can see us interacting with you guys and reading your comments during those breaks. So tyt.com/join gets you the tyt.com member feed. which is where I read those comments. So Uma Karam and everyone else that wrote in the super chats, we appreciate you and we read those comments at the time. I'll just read one here before we go to the next story from a member on TYT.com. Black Mamba 97 said, America's doing the same thing with Cuban babies, by the way, referring to what was happening in Gaza with the babies. Hospitals don't have the power to run ICUs or NICUs. That's definitely true, and I'm getting more and more enraged by what we're doing to Cuba. We shouldn't be in the business of starving people to death. It is sick and deeply immoral. Thank you for making that point. Yeah, so what's next?
All right, so we're gonna go over to CBS News and see what's going on over there. And as I'm sure everyone knows, there have been some major shakeups over at CBS, and none of them have really been good. Bari Weiss is doing her best, I assume, to not be completely embarrassed by her network's performance, but it's becoming increasingly difficult for her to do that. Cenk, what are your thoughts on everything going on over at that network right now?
What I'm amused by is not CBS, but the rest of the news media, all pretending that CBS is still a real station. No, it was bought by the Ellisons, the #1 donors to the IDF. Netanyahu pretty much bragged that Ellison bought CBS for them, and now they're firing anyone who would even dare to think about something negative about Israel, and putting in their place total tools for a different country. That's so obvious. But okay, let's tell you about how they're doing it. And again, I'm amused by the rest of the media's reaction.
Yeah, so speaking of David Ellison, so he anointed Bari Weiss to be the head of CBS last year, and Bill Owens stepped down as the longtime executive producer of 60 Minutes, saying in a memo obtained by the New York Times, he said, over the past months, it has become clear that I would not be allowed to run the show as I have always run it, to make independent decisions based on what was right for 60 Minutes, right for the audience. So then when he stepped down, Bari Weiss promoted Tanya Simon, who is the daughter of the legendary CBS correspondent Bob Simon, as Owens' replacement. And it kind of signaled to CBS staff like something of a willingness to uphold 60 Minutes' sterling reputation, and it really did have a stellar reputation. However, after just over a year in that role, as of this morning, Simon has officially been ousted from CBS. So who is replacing her? It is a technology journalist named Nick Bilton, who has most recently worked as a correspondent for Vanity Fair. And Bilton's ascension to this role is very similar to Weiss's ascension to the head of CBS, in that both of them entered very high-ranking roles within the network, despite not having any of the requisite experience that you would expect for someone in that role. So Bilton said in a statement to the staff that he considers the new role the honor of his career, because like what else would be? But as The Guardian points out, while Bilton has a lengthy career as a tech journalist and documentary filmmaker, he has not produced a broadcast television program, and certainly not one with the history and complexities of 60 Minutes. Weiss also began her role as editor-in-chief of the network in October 2025 with a background in opinion commentary, but no experience in television news. So there seems to be a pattern here. They don't like experienced people for some reason, because maybe they're easier to manipulate, but that's just my musings over here. So the firings didn't stop there, of course. The network has also parted ways with Cecilia Vega, a 60 Minutes correspondent who joined the program back in 2023, and Dragan Mikhailovich, the executive editor who had spent decades on the show. And earlier on Thursday morning, a representative for the veteran correspondent Sharon Alfonsi confirmed that she was terminated by the network. Alfonsi said a day earlier that her contract had not been renewed and that she remained an at-will employee. So Alfonsi, you might actually remember her. She has publicly attributed her contract to not being renewed to that infamous CCOT story, where she was chronicling the abuse of migrant detainees sent to the El Salvadorian prison. And that was a story that Bari Weiss, as soon as she turned up to CBS, she shelved the whole thing because Donald Trump did not want it out there. And that was a decision that she did, and it really set the tone for what CBS under Bari Weiss was going to be. Alfonsi of the incident, she had this to say. She said, following an intense editorial dispute over our prison story, repeated attempts by my representation to establish a path forward were met with absolute silence from network executives. The message could not be clearer. My time at 60 Minutes is apparently over. And that was from Sharon. So all of these firings, it's considered to be a clearing of grievances of sorts, especially since the ousting of Simon coincides with Weiss's frustration over the abrupt departure of Anderson Cooper. And Anderson Cooper, everybody knows that name. He had a lot of pull, but he left. And this is what he had to say as he walked out the door. He said, things can always evolve and change. And I think that's awesome. And things should evolve and change. But I hope the core of what 60 Minutes is always remains. I think the independence of 60 Minutes has been critical. And Weiss was reportedly blindsided by Cooper's departure, and she was furious that nobody even told her about it. He just left without her letting her know. But the public has now been taking shots at CBS and by extension to Barry Weiss and other media elites. But recently, Sergio Campos, a high school student who won the Mike Wallace Scholarship for his coverage on the immigration crackdowns, had this to say.
I want to also acknowledge how the recent direction of the outlet stains the legacy of Mike Wallace, the namesake of this scholarship. As corporate elites take hold, over the very pipes through which our information flows, journalism that serves the people becomes increasingly harder to come by, yet ever more crucial. And what the people want is the truth. So if at any time you hesitate to utter the word genocide or remain silent in the face of blatant lies, remember to ask yourself, who is this for? I hope you choose us. Thank you.
So now we have Nick Bilton in the role. He's going to be overlooking 60 Minutes. That show is just not going to be what it used to be. It's just going to be a different show. Bilton says he has a notebook full of ideas, and I'm sure we all will be so excited to hear what his plans are for the network. Cenk, what can we expect from the new CBS?
God, I would love to get my hands on that notebook.
That notebook?
Guess is, you open up the notebook and all it says is Israel, 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 Israel. All work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. I will always cover for Israel. I will always cover for Israel. I know, brother, I know. We'll get back to the interview and him in a second. First, I want to give a shout out to Campos, that high school student you just saw. Wins a scholarship from CBS. Look at the guts on that kid. Nice job. That's how you do real journalism. This kid's got TYT written all over him. Okay, we'll be looking out. Way to take it to him, and not just about CBS overall, but mentioning the genocide. So that is very bold and brave, because of course, if you want to work in American media, you can't say the truth about the genocide. You'll never get hired. And if you say when you already work there, you'll get fired by someone like Barry Weiss. So look, now let's turn to CBS. So a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, oh, they're trying to kiss up to Donald Trump, and that's why they got rid of Colbert, and they're just right-wingers and blah. No, Larry Ellison has given a ton of money to Democrats before. The only reason that they care about Trump now is because Trump is doing whatever Israel wants. Here, I'll make you a guarantee. Now there's a big if Trump ever defies Israel, then CBS will no longer be pro-Trump. They'll be like, oh, I don't know that he's fit for office, and he's changed a lot recently, and they'll have all of their anchors and puppets with Netanyahu's arms right up their asses. Oh, we are worried about Trump. Now they're like, oh, Trump is doing what Israel wants. He is great. We love Trump. We will fire Colbert for you. Because the Ellisons didn't spend all that money to make more money with news media. So CBS is a dying brand. The average age of their audience is like 98. No, he bought it for his beloved Israel to do propaganda. It actually has nothing to do with Trump. Like I said, guaranteed. If Trump turns on Israel, CBS will turn on Trump. Not only Ellison, almost all of the pro-Israel donors, Miriam Adelson, so many others, gave to Bill Clinton, have given to Democrats, give to Republicans, because they don't have an ideology outside of Israel, make the Americans serve Israel, right? Yeah, that's what you guys look like. So I'm amused by the idea of Bilton's interview, right? My guess is there was only one question. So what do you think about Israel? And my guess is his answer was, I love it more than life. And I've got a lot of ideas about what we could do about housing market and affordability. They're like, no, you already got the job, move on. We don't care about anything else. You already gave the correct answer that you will crawl up Israel's ass and do whatever you're commanded to do on their behalf by Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss is, of course, only works for Israel. She's not known for anything other than kissing Israel's ass and doing propaganda for Israel. And she's the queen of cancel culture. She started cancel culture on campuses, college campuses so long ago. She would make names of anyone who was not just critical of Israel, but pro-Palestinian, and then she would try to ruin their lives. Now she's graduated up to being able to do that with the might of CBS News. So guys, stop the fake debates. I mean, I see all these people on TV like, oh, what do you think will happen with CBS? CBS is so important. Oh, what kind of news do you think they'll do? Are they slightly more right wing? What is this nonsense conversation? CBS is nothing but Hasbara now. So you should ignore it. You'd be an idiot to think that was real news. So 60 Minutes is an awesome institution and has done great journalism in the past, but it's now dead. You're not looking at 60 Minutes, you're looking at the zombie version of 60 Minutes controlled by Israel. So every reporter on there, Israel is the greatest, Americans must give money to Israel, otherwise they're anti-Semites. They're all zombies. No self-respecting person would stay at that junk organization. And look, guys, Anderson Cooper hasn't met an Israeli talking point he didn't want to make out with. And even he was like, that's a bit much. Okay, come on. Come on. We have nothing but fake conversations in American media. No, watching CBS is crazy at this point. Of course their news isn't real news. It's literally propaganda made for the express purpose of brainwashing you. Who would want to get voluntarily brainwashed? All right, Yaz, we're unfortunately out of time. So we appreciate you, you're awesome. All right, when we come back, guys, we're gonna do the revolution, and a guest is gonna join us who thinks that maybe we should do markets for humans. Who are we doing it for now? We'll explain.
Come on.
back on TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. All right, we're gonna do a quick segment for you guys inspired by Operation Hope. And then we've got an amazing interview coming up for you all. I don't want you to miss it because I think that it's an economic model that makes a lot of sense and that we all should get behind. And I've got a thought on how to do that. But okay, so I want to tell you about this guy named Jake Auchincloss. He's pretending to be a Democrat. He was on TV arguing basically, in my opinion, for more war over the weekend, which makes no sense because the Democrats are supposed to be against the war. But he was saying that we didn't get the job done, and that's a talking point we heard a lot from people pretending to be Democrats. But he also came out against Graham Plattner. Now that's incredibly strange. Graham Plattner is the Democratic candidate for Senate in Maine. And Auchincloss is again pretending to be a Democrat, so why would he be against his own party? He said, because he had the wrong kind of tattoo. Now look, this is a disingenuous talking point and usually made by, honestly, supporters of Israel. And that's because Graham Plattner, but not just Israel, almost all the corporate PACs. Because Graham Plattner does not take money from a foreign government, but he also doesn't take money from corporate PACs. And for the corporate Democrats, they hate that because it embarrasses them. Then everybody finds out, he's clean and honest. Well, how about the rest of them? They're taking tons of money. But let's be fair. Has Auchincloss taken money from corporate PACs in this cycle recently? Yeah, of course. He's taken $200,000. That's just this cycle. There's a lot more where that came from, and that's just from corporate PACs. So we love when you guys get involved here, and we want you to do it again. So we're asking you to reach out to Auchincloss and ask him, why did you accept $50,000 in corporate PAC donations from the healthcare industry while you sit on the health subcommittee? Now I get it, it's hard to get all of that. I mean, you could pause the tape and rewind and get the exact words, etc. But don't worry about that. Put it in your own words. He's on the health subcommittee, so he's supposed to be looking out for your health. But instead, he's taking money from the healthcare companies. Now, after he takes $50,000 from their corporate PACs, who do you think he's gonna represent? You or them? I mean, there's a reason why they gave him that money. They didn't give it for your health. They gave it for their financial health. So I think it's super fair to ask. People say, no, you can't bother Democrats like that. That would be Democrat on Democrat crime, no unity. But wait a minute, he's the one that told you to vote for the Republican instead of the Democrat. He doesn't believe in unity at all. So if he'd like to attack other Democrats, no problem. We could be your huckleberry. So, you can comment on Auchincloss's most recent post, and you could ask him, why are you qualified to be a member of Congress when you accepted $50,000 in corporate PAC donations from the healthcare industry while sitting on the health subcommittee? Slightly different way of phrasing it, but you see the point, which is ask him, why are you taking money from the industries you're supposed to be regulating? And if you do that, we don't trust you. Now, if he says to you, no, I'm such an angel that money doesn't affect me, well, okay, then don't take the money. And that way we'll have confidence. But how do I know what's in your heart? So if you tell me you're taking legalized bribes from a corporate PAC, then I'm gonna say, brother, you probably work for them. And when they give you money second time, you know what that means? They got a return on investment the first time. So that is how a lot of these corporate Democrats are, and now that Tom Massey's been defeated, literally 100% of the Republican Party takes corporate PAC money. Hawley in the Senate does it. Fairest show in America. Okay, but okay, fine, 99% of Republicans in Congress do. And that's why they can't be trusted. They don't work for us, they work for the people who are paying them money. And it is almost all of the corporate PACs, and yes, a foreign government or several foreign governments in there as well. So if you can, find Auchincloss's social media accounts and ask him this very, very fair question. In fact, you don't have to find it, it's right there, Instagram.com. They don't have the easiest name in the world, but you see it right there. Write that down and ask him that question. And by the way, if he answers it, tell us about it. We'd love to find out. And I love Operation Hope, wonderful volunteers getting us to ask our officials to take positive action for us and not for the donor class. So I love everything that they do, and those volunteers are great. So let's utilize everything we have at our power to get positive change in the world. Which leads me to the next conversation. So some say that trickle-down economics is the way to work. How does that work? Well, you give all your money to the rich and the powerful, and then they trickle all over you decades later. Now, that's the theory. Has it actually worked? Well, the trickling might have worked, but the money coming down to us hasn't worked at all. Now, you could see this is an obvious scam, right? So the rich and powerful give donations to our politicians, and then our politicians give them giant tax breaks, and oftentimes taking it from you and me, as Donald Trump did, cut benefits for average Americans, people who are hungry, people who are sick, and gave trillions to the richest people in the country. That's class warfare in reverse. They're robbing the poor and the middle class to give to the rich. And every time we challenge them on it, they go, oh, no, the rich are so benevolent. It'll eventually come down to you. No, that's just giving our money to them, okay? It turns out there's a better way to do that. And that we could have markets that don't just work for inanimate objects, but for human beings. Is that really possible? Is that hope, that dream possible? Well, our next guest is here to tell you, yes, it is. There's a whole economic theory behind it. It's actually, in my opinion, nearly indisputable. And we hope to God that the next presidential candidate adopts it. That's my opinion again. We're gonna welcome Nick Hanauer here, a very successful businessman, by the way, who started a lot of nonprofit organizations and is a civic innovator and is the founder of Civic Ventures and is the advocate of this economic model. Nick, welcome back to the show.
Cenk, it's so good to see you, man.
Yeah, great to see you. All right, so let's just start out nice and simple. This whole idea of trickle-down economics, as I just explained, absurd, right? And it's neoliberalism, it's just a different word for it, supply-side economics, etc. So what is the reverse, this middle-out economics? Tell us about that, what is it?
Yeah, so Cenk, let me zoom out a little bit and just try to create some context. The thing, there are two reasons why ordinary Americans have gotten totally screwed over the last 50 years by economic policy. The first is there are a bunch of rich, powerful people who just want to do it, and those people are probably never going to go away. But the thing that really hurt the most was this idea about economic cause and effect that we call neoclassical economics or neoliberalism. And that framework of thought, if you take it seriously and enact policy on the basis of it, can only create one outcome, which is the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get poorer. And there are all these technical assumptions about human behavior, about the dynamics of human social systems, what profit is, where it comes from, that is embedded in ordinary economics. And by that, I mean the Econ 101 you took in college, right? That this is what they taught you. They taught you, for example, that because the economy is an equilibrium system, if wages go up, then the number of jobs have to go down, the taxes are a dead weight loss, all this stuff. And again, if it was true, then trickle-down economics would work. But the truth is that it was all a pack of lies, that it was never true, it's never been true. These underlying assumptions, plausible when people cooked them up, but they were never verified through empirical experiment or anything like that. And so Cenk, what I have been doing with a group in collaboration with a bunch of economists from around the world, which is to try to figure out that stuff was not true, and to surface what is true when you replace those old assumptions, which were nonsense, with what I know scientifically and empirically is true about human behavior and so on and so forth. You have a profoundly different view of economic cause and effect. So in the old view, raising wages kills jobs. It's true by definition. In the new view, raising wages creates jobs because wages effectively are the food that businesses eat. And the more they eat, the bigger they get, and the bigger they get, the more they hire, and so on and so forth. And so what we have developed, I and my collaborator Eric Beinhocker, who runs something called the Institute for New Economic Thinking at Oxford University, is we've created this new economic paradigm by putting all these pieces together that we call market humanism. So markets in service to humanity. And when you understand the economy in a 21st century way, it makes trickle-down economics look like nonsense. And the opposite of that we call middle-out economics. And the basic proposition is that a thriving middle class is the cause of economic growth, not its consequence. And in that context, the policymaking becomes very, very simple. Like anything you do should be directed at making sure that the typical family thrives. And when they do, the economy booms.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to your book with Eric, Markets Built for Humans.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a funny title because shouldn't they be? But as
of course, like of course they should be. But we live in a world where markets are not built for humans, where markets are built for capital efficiency.
Yeah.
Right. We have elevated capital efficiency to godliness.
Yeah.
Thing that returns capital to shareholders is what we should do.
Okay, so we're gonna come back to that in a second, but I like what you're saying there because I want to stick with the old view versus the new view, which you mentioned, right? So the old view just said things are true by definition, right? Capital efficiency is what we must serve, right? And if you raise wages, you're gonna lose jobs, that it must be true. But they never actually proved it. So if somebody's sitting at home going, well, how do I know the new view is true? Who has the data to back them up on something like the minimum wage?
Well, if you download this booklet, you can go through the 300 footnotes in it, which will link to empirical studies that show that it's not true, right? So, Cenk, here's an anecdote, right? So, economists have believed for like 80 years that raising the minimum wage will be a job killer. And it was not until 1994 till economists actually checked. Like no one had ever actually checked to see if the minimum wage killed jobs. And then these two guys, Alan Kruger and David Card, did a study comparing New Jersey to New York, where New Jersey had raised the minimum wage and New York hadn't, and discovered to their horror that there was, not only wasn't there any job loss where the minimum wage went up, it looked like there were more jobs where the wages went up. And the economics profession had a cow over this. A Nobel Prize winning economist referred to these guys as camp following whores in the pages of the Wall Street Journal for having the temerity to challenge what he called economic science. And since that time, there have been literally hundreds of studies on the minimum wage, all of whom have shown that there's no job loss. And the latest studies on the biggest minimum wage increases have shown that, in fact, there are job increases the more you raise the wage, the more you raise wages. And so there has been an empirical revolution in economics that we are relying on, where people actually check the numbers instead of just building these models. And when you check the numbers, you find out that all of this was nonsense. It was all a lie, a scam, right?
Yeah.
There is literally zero correlation between lower tax rates on rich people and any kind of growth, GDP growth, wage growth, productivity growth, anything. Like it was all a lie. And again, some of this was nefarious. Some of this was animated by people who were evil. Some of it was just, they just were wrong. They were just wrong. And what our aim is to show people what's correct, what's just empirically verified. And when you do, you're like, oh my gosh, it's not whether we should increase the minimum wage. It's like, should it be $30 or $25 or $35? You know, like you're asking a very different kind of question. It's a diminishing returns question, not an optimization question, which is how many jobs are we willing to sacrifice to improve the lot of some working people, which is the old question. And that question is nonsense.
So Nick, I want to stay on that for a second because they say, well, if you increase the minimum wage or you increase wages at all, that'll cost the company more money. And if you cost the company more money, they're going to go out of business and you're going to cost a lot of jobs. But wait a minute, if we use that logic, then an 8-hour workday costs the company more money. I mean, if they got paid the guy the same amount, but he worked 10 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours, it'll be more capital efficient, right? The weekends cost companies a lot of money. Getting rid of child labor costs them money.
Yes,
and none of us should have had jobs when we did all those regulations and laws, right? But that didn't happen, did it?
No, of course not. But just reverse the argument. If nobody has any money, who will buy the stuff? Like, look, the National Restaurant Association, which has been, relentless in trying down the minimum wage, wants this deal where everyone can afford to go to restaurants except restaurant employees, right?
Yep.
And every capitalist wants that deal, right? I want my employees to be really poor because I'm going to pay them poverty wages. And I want your employees to have a lot of money because I need them to be able to afford to buy my products. And sadly, my employees will not be able to pay taxes because they're so poor. They'll have to get benefits. And your employees will pay taxes to pay for the benefits of my employees. Like, it's nuts. It's madness. That's why the minimum wage should be $30 an hour, right? Like, there is no reason for anyone working for a company, particularly a big company, to not be able to live in dignity without food stamps, without government assistance. And companies that cannot afford to pay their people that much are not really businesses, they're parasites.
Yeah, so they have a couple of lines of attack, the bad guys, the trickle down neoliberal guys.
Yeah.
They say, well, our theories have to be true by definition. Okay. And then they say, well, you shouldn't believe those guys because they're a bunch of commie Marxists and they're trying to turn us into Cuba and North Korea. Nick, you're not a Marxist, are you?
No, I've helped start 45 companies. I was the first non-family investor in Amazon.com. I built the largest internet advertising company probably in the world, Aquantive, that we sold to Microsoft for $6.5 billion in 2007. I'm as capitalist as they come, I think.
Yeah.
But being rapacious doesn't make you a capitalist. It makes you a sociopath and an asshole. Can I say that on this network?
You just did.
You do not have to treat working people horribly to run a successful enterprise. Now, in fairness, standards are incredibly important because it's really hard for one company to pay their workers $30 an hour because it's the right thing to do when their direct competitor pays $7.5, right? That you're not likely to stay in business for that long if you're operating in that way, which is why we have to have national standards, which requires every company to pay workers enough to get by and live a life of security and dignity without government assistance. This is not communism. What we have actually is socialism, but for the rich. That is the economy we live in today.
Yeah, and so you say you're a capitalist, and you've proven it amply. I say I'm a capitalist, and so, but so some people have a negative view of that these days because we don't really live under capitalism now. We live under corporatism, and corporations have captured our government and turned it into crony capitalism, et cetera. But as a capitalist, wouldn't you want your employees to have more money because they're also your consumers?
Of course. And here's the thing, I want them to have Cenk, imagine if the median wage double what it is today, which by the way is what it would be if the typical worker had merely maintained their same share of the economy over the last 50 years and averaged by neoliberalism. Our economy would be twice as large. Which would be good for everybody, right? It's completely nuts to live in this world where we're trying to impoverish most people. It's incredibly short-sighted. But can I address the capitalism thing because I think it's so important. So if you took a course in economics and heard why capitalism works, they told you that capitalism works by allocating scarce resources efficiently. That actually is not true. That was plausible, but it isn't true. The reason even folks who are suspicious of capitalism should be in favor of markets is that markets are the best social technology we've ever used to enable large groups of people to come together and solve and cooperate complex problems, which is all prosperity is. Prosperity is not money or GDP. Prosperity is the accumulation of solutions to human problems. Going from aspirin to antibiotics that's prosperity, right? Solving those new problems. And markets are evolutionary systems in which groups compete to solve the best problems. And you are a great example of that. To compete directly with the networks to try to solve this information he has, and thank goodness you can do it, right? Because we need this kind of and experimentation in our economy.
Yeah, and I've also debated folks on the other side that actually do believe in Marxism or communism, et cetera. Yeah. And sometimes people will say, well, we don't need markets. No,
you do.
No, anytime that somebody trades a tomato and a cucumber for a piece of bread, and that's a market, right? So markets are absolutely inevitable. So then we get to the title of your book, Markets Built for Humans. First question, of course, is who are they built for now?
They're built for capital efficiency. That's it. Markets are built to maximize returns for shareholders. That is the highest value in the land, and restructured our laws and our norms in ways such that business leaders and boards will get in trouble. Deviate from that norm. It's completely insane. And in the market humanist paradigm, which is what we call this new economics, is market humanism, markets in service to humanity. Corporation is not to enrich shareholders. It is to solve human problems in a fair and sustainable way. And profit is the reward for that. Excuse me. And if you can't make good products in a fair and sustainable way and make a profit, then you don't deserve to, right? Like if you have to cheat, if you have to exploit people, if you have, then you should go out of business.
So how do we do it, Nick? So how do we restructure our markets so we're in charge and not the machines? So let me just build off that real quick.
Elect guys like Graham Plow. Well, apropos to your last segment.
Yeah, for sure. And so look, you were one of the first investors in Amazon, and Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna got Amazon to do $15 minimum wage. And to your point, by the way, after they did that, then Amazon had an incentive to get every other company to $15 minimum wage because of competition, right? But back to the central issue. So right now we run on the stock market. And the stock market, it runs on a quarterly, you have to deliver on a quarterly basis, you have to get 15% or higher return. So it's this machine that give me more efficiency, more profit. And so I think kind of accidentally, kind of on purpose, built this system to only serve money and not people, as you're saying, right?
Yes.
But that system's already built. So it's so hard to go from that to a system based on serving humanity, which is the obvious right answer for how we should build a system. So how do we make that transition?
I mean, politics, right? But the starting point has to be to understand that other possibility exists. So one of the worst things about neoliberalism is this notion that there is no alternative, that this is just how the economy works, and you're just stuck with it. And there's this really famous book, neoliberal kind of canonical neoliberal text called "The Great Trade-Off" by Arthur Erkin that said that you could have fairness or you could have economic efficiency, but you can't have both. They're in inverse proportion. All of that is nonsense. The truth is that when you understand the economy in a 21st century way, fairness causes growth, because without fairness, you can't have cooperation. Can't have cooperation, you cannot solve problems. And so it all starts, at least we think it all starts with a set of ideas that can compete with the old ideas. And then, dude, it's you and me, buddy, and we got to sell the heck out of this thing. We just have to be unrelenting in our insistence that the old paradigm is a pack of lies and bad for everybody, and there's a new paradigm that is good for everybody, and we will not tolerate the old one. And look, there will be, a lot of people will resist. Of course, the usual Chamber of Commerce types who don't give a rip about anybody but profits are going to resist. And to be fair, there's going to be a lot of people in the academic economics community who are going to be pretty uncomfortable with this, because this basically says all that stuff you've been teaching people for the last 40 years, it wasn't true. And worse, it was terrible for them. Like Cenk, if you pick up Greg Mankew's Econ 101 textbook, this is the best-selling economics textbook in the world today, it would make you throw up in your mouth. It is so ideological. It is so biased. And it is teaching people all the wrong things about economics. You take that class, you go into the world, you go into Congress, and you think that's true. This is why corporate Democrats are so bad, is they actually believe that nonsense, right? Yeah. They actually believe that if you raise the minimum wage, it will be a job killer. Why? Because their econ professor told them that's true. And so we got to knock those ideas down, and that will not be all it will take, but it will be. It'll make a big impact.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in business school and getting into debates, which is what you should do. Like, you should challenge, traditional way of thinking, etc. I remember we were studying the Soviet Union because I'm old, and we got
you and me, man.
Yeah, and I remember my professor at Wharton saying, "Well, it's one of the top economic models in the world," and I'm like, so everybody's gonna work as hard as they can and only take what they need. Have you ever met a person like that? I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And then we got to the corporatism that we're currently living under, right? And they're like, yeah, and you're supposed to make 15% profit every year. Like, how is it possible that every company is going to make 15% extra every single year? That doesn't make any sense.
Completely nuts. It's completely nuts. And this is a fact that you probably know, but over the last 30 or 40 years, the share of GDP going to labor has fallen by about 6 or 7%, and the share of GDP going to corporate profits has risen by exactly that amount. So it went from about 6 to about 12 or 13%. So that 6 or 7% of GDP is $2 trillion a year or something like that. And that $2 trillion a year doesn't need to be profits. It shouldn't be profits. It's just profits because powerful people prefer it to be profits. That $2 trillion should be wages. And if it was, our economy would be growing at 4% a year, not 2% a year.
Yeah, no, that's
all there is to it.
Yeah, that's middle out. And by the way, it's not like we didn't try middle out. We did from 1938 to 78, pretty much.
And it worked great.
Yeah, it built the greatest.
Great.
It built the greatest economy the world has ever seen.
Yeah. And as soon as the neoliberals took over, GDP growth rates, by the way, and GDP is a crappy measure of welfare, just admit that, but even so, GDP growth rates went from 4.5% during the golden age to 2% during the neoliberal age. Yeah. So, why do we do this? It's idiotic, except it makes really rich people richer.
Yeah,
I can tell you that.
And then, what's funny is our media too, because they're like, are you saying that rich and powerful people would want to protect their wealth and power? Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. Yeah, okay. No. Unless they're Nick Hanauer.
No. Trust me when I tell you. Yeah, they do.
They do. Yeah, but you're doing this in a way that really I love it because I think that it's helpful to everybody. And plus, I agree with you. We could have an efficient system that works well for everyone and that actually delivers for humanity. It doesn't have to be one or the other. I totally agree with you on the trade-off too. So last thing, look, my thought on it, Nick, is if we want to reinvent how we do things and on things so structural and foundational, right? That we've got to start with the rules, which is basically the coding for our society, right? Both from business and government perspective, so that you really got to start on the government side, which then unfortunately
100%.
forces us into politics. But if you don't have the government rewriting the code to work for humanity instead of working for shareholders' profits, then we're never going to be able to solve this problem. Does that make sense?
100%. 100%. You have to look, dude. You can do if you do you'd fix the country. You raise the minimum wage to $30 an hour. You raise the overtime threshold to $90,000 an hour. You have the rate on Social Security from 12.4 to 6.2%, and extend the Social Security tax to all income, which gives 95% of Americans a 6%. Basically a 6% tax cut, and secures Social Security forever. You raise taxes on rich people so that they don't have all these damn loopholes. We got the country back on track. This is not complicated, right? Those 3 or 4 policies would move $2.5–3 trillion a year from the rich to working families. We've got an economy that's growing twice as fast, and everybody's fat and happy. This is not complicated, but but only government can do it. It's not going to happen through the kindness of strangers. The business roundtable not going to send out a press release saying, "Oh, we're going to help," and all of that's. We need to change the laws, and in particular, we need to change the purpose of the corporation from maximizing shareholder value to solving human problems in a fair and sustainable way. And we do those 4 or 5. Nobody could touch it, the United States of America, my opinion.
Yep. All right, Nick Hanauer, American Patriot. His book is Markets Built for Humans, Create an Economy for People, Planet, and Democracy. Nick, and he wrote that with Eric Beinhocker from Oxford. Nick, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, and I appreciate you trying to get this message out for actual, real human beings in America.
Yeah, and just Cenk, I hope people will download. You can download this whole thing for free at marketsbuiltforhumans.org. Everybody should read it and share it.
Yep, and we'll put the link down below wherever you're watching this.
Great.
All right, Nick, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Cenk, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. All right, guys, that's all we have for you today. We have an amazing show for you guys coming up tomorrow, because every day, 6 o'clock Eastern. Much love. We'll see you then.